Hey guys, good morning from New York City. Welcome to day 2 of DEFiCON. We've got a ton of stuff today scheduled with lots of great speakers and teams coming in. We had some questions around Sushi Swap. Sushi Swap will be coming. We're scheduling exactly what time. There's been a little change on their side. So we will have Sushi Swap coming in and doing a talk, maybe in a wee hours of early AM on Eastern time zone. But if we can lock that in, we will lock that in. And as soon as we get confirmation, we're going to let everybody know. And so hopefully they will be joining to talk with us. I'm going to transition control of this next talk to Michael Dacampora, who is going to introduce you to Lisa Tan, our next speaker. This should be a very interesting talk. We'll really look forward to it. Mike, all yours. Hello, Mike. Michael. Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Mike's a little tied up. I will do the introduction. Looks like he has baby issues right now. So let him handle the baby issue. So Lisa, very excited to hear about your talk. You're going to do a presentation. I want first for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Take a minute to tell us about yourself. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing with the newsletter. I am a recipient and a member of that newsletter that you sent out. I think some fantastic stuff. And I guess you're based in Singapore. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's
okay.
Nighttime for me now, so it's nice.
Okay, great. At nighttime, and it's a little bit late for you, so thank you for having the patience to stay up with us. We're just getting up, basically. So you're our first talk for the day, which is great. Please tell us a little bit about you, your background, what you're doing, and then you can have control of the slide deck. Just share it with us, and please, it's your show. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think I'll just start with the presentation first because I know we're running out of time, and then I'll talk about myself later because you can always find that online. So can I have the permission to share the slides? Because I'm not able to share it right now.
Yes. 1 second. There you go.
All right.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, you're back.
Yeah, a little technical difficulty.
It's all right.
Good morning. Or good evening for you.
All right. So because the Mac if I share my slides, I need to restart everything because it's a new Mac. So that's not very easy.
You have to restart everything?
Do you see my slides?
I just see a mirror of the conference of AirMeet.
So that's not working. I can't seem to share applications. Oh.
Let's see.
Maybe. Okay, maybe this might work. You see it?
Yes, perfect.
Does this work?
Excellent. Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. Okay.
Great.
So, yes, good morning to you guys on the other side of the world. I have really experienced today, and today is really good. So, shout out to the day. Today will be very good. And together with today's session, I'm going to share a little bit more about traditional finance versus decentralized finance, a general landscape, and we can see what the current landscape is as well as what to expect in the future. During this entire session, I will be talking about a few projects, quite a number of projects actually. So nothing here is investment advice, nothing here is speculative in nature. Everything is completely educational. I just need to say that disclaimer. So we're going to cover 3 main things today: traditional finance, decentralized finance, and what to expect in the future, or what is currently going on in the future to prepare us for the future when it comes to decentralized finance. So before we get started, just want to share a little bit of what decentralized finance is even, because you have digital finance. So how is digital finance very different from decentralized finance? Everything's online anyway. Everything, you don't need to hold a piece of paper when you're buying an option contract. Everything is sent to you via email with a lot of terms and conditions. So what's the main difference? So I've talked about that in a book that I've written on economics and math of token engineering and DeFi. It's a very long title, but it also took me 3 years to research and write this book. So in there, it's a lot about the economics, the math, the considerations, the engineering, the building of all these DeFi as well as non-DeFi protocols. And at the end of the day, one of the key things is that, yes, we can tokenize digital assets that already exists in the place, but what we can do as well is to tokenize the structure and mechanisms of how we execute all of these different things. So this means increase in efficiency. This means automated execution. And one of the biggest power is decentralized ownership and decentralized participation. Instead of having one big hedge fund coming in to do market making or to not really to play the market or affect the market, but to be on the back end of allowing the markets to move. Instead of doing that, why can't we have technology now? We have the innovation tools now available to pool resources of little individual investors and players to behave like one big hedge fund. And this behave like one big hedge fund is really economics, because economics is about coordination, collaboration, and opportunity costs between different kind of players. So as we decentralize these things, we're also thinking about the economics that and the mechanisms that is behind powering all of these different things moving forward. So this is one of the biggest difference between DeFi and traditional finance or digital finance. So to get started, we're going to talk a little bit about traditional finance. And the thing about traditional finance is that it is very complicated. If someone tells you that, hey, I work in finance, and I can imagine you face a lot of people like that if you're living in New York or in Singapore or in London. A lot of people are in finance. And the thing is, finance is very complicated. So when someone says that I'm in finance, you don't really ask more questions about, what aspect of finance are you in. Usually you're just like, oh, okay, interesting finance, move on to the next topic. Whereas if you're speaking to a musician, and the musician will be telling you more about the different instruments, the different concerts, a little bit more interesting or a little bit more in-depth stuff that people can relate to. And why is that so? It's not that because finance is super boring. It's just that finance is very complicated. It can go really, really deep, really, really far, but not everyone is at the right level of understanding or knowledge to have that kind of conversations. So this is why I'm going to scope this entire conversation down into nine general sectors. And you can see them in 3 different roles. So they are also positioned properly, because the first role, we'll look at currency as a medium of exchange, we look at assets, and we look at how we can keep these assets. So when we talk about finance, these are the low-hanging fruits. These are the things that's very easy to talk about, very easy to understand, and something that impacts everyone, because we use currencies to buy things, we have different kind of assets, and we have different ways of keeping our assets. It could be under your bed, it could be in a piggy bank, or it could be in an actual bank. Then the second row, we're looking at something that's a little bit more complicated, and it still involves you as an individual doing all these different things. So we have exchanges, we have lending, borrowing, we have derivatives. So these are a little bit more complicated than before, but they're still doable as an individual. Then the last row gets definitely much more complicated with funds and portfolio, with insurance, with things beyond finance. So we're going to talk about all these different things. We're going to cover all these different scope and depth of what finance is. We're going to compare them with DeFi and traditional finance. So now moving on to DeFi, decentralized finance. Same thing, we're going to look at the same sectors, and we're going to compare across traditional finance and DeFi. So we're going to start with currency as a medium of exchange. So with traditional finance, you have your fiat currency or central bank currencies. Your GBP, your RMB, your EUR, your USD. And in DeFi, we have alternatives of that. So we have stable coins. So stable coins are basically the crypto version of USD, or the crypto version of these traditional finance coins. And they are stable in nature, or they're stable relative to that coin in general. And you can trade much easily. So we have things like USDC, which is off-chain collateral. We have on-chain collateral assets like DAI, we have new types of algo stablecoins like DBase, where it combines a lot of different types of very complicated but very interesting mechanisms to create a stable asset. Or we can have stuff like Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't exactly interact with Ethereum, right? Because they are of two different kind of platforms, or two different kind of specificity in technology. What we can do instead is to wrap Bitcoin and for it to be used in the Ethereum platform. So what we're trying to do with that is that Bitcoin can be used in the Bitcoin network, and what we can do now is to turn Bitcoin into something that can interact with the Ethereum network. So it becomes another form, it becomes a currency that can be used within that network. Or we can have ETH. And ETH is very interesting because what I've talked about so far is really a peer-to-peer kind of currency where we can trade with each other. How I see ETH or Ether is that it is still a currency and mainly used by protocols, because for every transaction that you send on the Ethereum network, you have to pay some form of ETH to the system. And so ETH now becomes the medium of currency for protocols to talk and interact with each other. So we're really expanding the scope of currency. We're really expanding the scope of medium of exchange when we move to DeFi as well. Now we talk about assets. In traditional finance, you have existing asset classes like FX, equity, bonds, properties, a lot of different kind of interesting assets that have been there for a very, very long time. And what we're doing now is to either create the crypto version of that, or we can mix and match different kind of asset classes to create new forms of assets. So stuff like Maker, Comp, Aave, YFI, they have a lot of different components of asset class, and traditional asset classes, but they might not be in one specific asset class. They could be in an assortment of asset classes. So we're creating a whole new asset class now where we're looking at DeFi protocols or DeFi assets. And where do we keep these assets? In traditional finance, you've got traditional banks, like all the banks that you have in place that you grew up understanding and learning. And then recently we have a burst or boom of fintech banks like Revolut and Monzo and TransferWise. So these are new age banks. And these are still centralized. So the whole point of DeFi, decentralized finance, is to decentralize every component of finance. It might not be 100% decentralized, but at least try to remove the middleman and try to decentralize as much as possible. So here we have DeFi wallets. So like My Ether wallet, MetaMask, Ledger, Trezor, all these different ways of you being your own bank and you keeping your assets by yourself and safekeeping it. So that was the general understanding of the intro to finance or intro to DeFi. What we're going to look at is something that's a little bit more complicated. And one of the things I really love to talk about is exchanges. So exchange is how we make trades, how we exchange one asset for another or one product for another. We used to do that in markets, like in real markets, farmers markets, and as things get more complicated, as people start to move further away, we need a centralized place to to do exchanges. So that's how we have the Nasdaq, the New York Stock Exchange, the Shanghai, London Stock Exchange, and you have all these different platforms available to be exchanging. But they're still centralized, right? They're still centralized because they have central clearance, and the platform, it's a centralized platform where people will come in to be trading. And what we are doing with decentralized exchanges is, instead of just having an order book to be matching trades, what we can do is to decentralize the entire mechanism to enable this trade. And so Bancor is the project that really started this, using a thing called bonding curve to bring in a lot of engineering principles. So it is not too far-fetched. It's just taking principles that exist in the real world and bringing them to DeFi or bringing them to the on-chain world and apply them in different ways. So today we have three of the top DeFi exchanges of Uniswap, Bancor, and SushiSwap by transaction volume. And these are exchanges that will exchange between different kind of assets. Then we also have different kind of exchanges like Curve, where you're exchanging between the same type of asset of the relatively same value. So remember I talked about currency as a medium of exchange. We have different types of USD. So there are different ways of creating one crypto USD from the USD that we have, in paper notes in your wallet. But because there's so many different ways of creating that crypto USD, these crypto USD in general should remain the same price, $1. But sometimes we need to, instead of using USDC, we want to use USDT because USDT gives us better interest rates. So we want to swap between them. And Curve is the project specifically solving that problem. And then we also have 1inch. So 1inch is an aggregator of all these different decentralized exchanges. So you can see that at the end of the day, the basic foundation is that they're all created with this thing called bonding curves to enable all these different trades to happen without any centralized clearance. And it's done automatically. And we can expand them from just trading between different pairs to trading pairs of the same kind of value to trading 3 or 4 different pairs at one time or aggregating all these different trades together. And that is where innovation comes in. With lending and borrowing as well, we have a lot of innovation in that space. So previously, we do have banks and fintech banks or traditional banks just facilitating that, and they get quite a big cut. Today, we have lending protocols like Aave, Maker, and Compound, where we can do peer-to-peer lending and peer-to-peer borrowing and lending. And this helps a lot with interest rates because you're removing the middleman. And as the space is still it's still growing and still maturing, so you have a lot of things that's over-collateralized, where you will not have what happened in 2008 of things being under-collateralized, and the whole market just went bust. And so we learned that lesson, we applied that lesson in DeFi, and we make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. And that is really powerful learning lesson. And then we have derivatives. So derivatives as a financial security, or derivatives as a form of security. In traditional finance, we have things like futures contract, forward contract, interest rate swaps, options, CDS, very complicated structured products. And they're very fun and very interesting because we're looking at ways to hedge risk, we're looking at ways to increase gains, we're looking at ways to insure and protect yourself. So derivatives are very powerful. And in DeFi, this is something that is coming into life a lot more and coming to prosper a lot more. And in derivatives, we have the older projects like synthetics, and we have newer projects like Open Hedging UMA and Perp Finance. So Perp Finance is perpetual finance. So other than creating crypto versions of derivatives, other than creating decentralized versions of derivatives, we're also creating new types of derivatives. So right now we have futures contract in the traditional financial world or the real world, and with crypto today, we can create perpetual futures contract. So the futures contract does not expire, and you can engineer a way to make sure that happens and that exists, and it's always settled fairly between all parties. So if we can do perpetual futures, can you imagine we can do perpetual options, perpetual swaps? A lot of different things can start exploding. And this is where we are really tapping into technology. We're really tapping into innovation to increase the usability and improve and reduce inefficiency in the current market that we have today. And lastly, we're going to go into things that's a little bit more complicated. So, for example, we have funds and portfolio. Yes, in traditional finance, we have ETFs, a lot of different kind of funds, hedge funds, mutual funds. Right now, the DeFi space is growing in that as well. So we have decentralized portfolios where you can also trade those assets like PIDAL, Balancer, DHedge, Yearn Finance, Alpha Finance, different types of funds, different types of portfolio to satisfy different kind of risks in the space. This also means that when there are such supply of assets, that means that there is demand of these kind of products in the market. And it just shows that the space is really maturing. And one other way to understand if the space is maturing is having insurance. Because insurance is really a cost if you think about it. It's a cost to protect yourself from risk. And a space is really maturing when people realize that there is risk in the space and I want to protect myself. And so in traditional finance, the insurance space is huge. It's billions of dollars every year. And in DeFi, it's still growing and it's still very new. There's a lot of potential to tap into that. Right now, we have a few decentralized insurance players or platforms like Nexus Mutual and Cover, where they provide insurance to different types of assets. Of course, there are a lot of different types of insurance, right? You can consider derivatives as insurance as well because you're looking at ways to hedge against your risk or your exposure. So having insurance in this space, it's also creating a new form of insurance or new category of insurance for example, smart contract insurance, because everything is executed with code. Everything is done with machines. And there isn't really an insurance that insure against machines and code. So this is where a whole new field, a whole new industry comes out. What about beyond finance? Beyond finance is where finance or money is really treated as a means to an end, because money is really just a facilitator with all these different transactions. So we have things like art and betting markets. And in DeFi, you have the same stuff. You have NFTs, which is hitting all the headlines in the past few months, with collectibles, digital collectibles. We have lottery. So you have this thing called Pool Together, where it's a no-lose lottery. And we have different kind of prediction markets like Augur and Gnosis. So you can see that the space is, the landscape is actually quite full. There's a lot of different kind of players in the game. And that's very interesting. But what's next? This is really just a start. It is not ending. It's not slowing down anytime soon. Innovation is coming every single day. And DeFi is really a full-time job. It's not possible for you to do DeFi part-time and do your work during the day, because there's so many things happening, and everyone is innovating and growing at a very, very fast pace. So what else is growing outside of DeFi? Two things mainly. The first one is global digital currencies. So things like your central bank digital currencies. That is also very big. Not right now. There isn't much interaction with DeFi, but it's growing very huge in its own segment and own sector. And once that's mature, once DeFi is mature, you can imagine them coming together. Or what central bank digital currencies can do is to tap into the different experiments, the monetary policy that's going on in DeFi, and then use it to improve the design and monetary policy and execution and economics of global digital currencies. The other thing that's coming in is regulations. So before we have regulations, which is a little bit more domestic in nature, the first thing that we look at is standardization. So standards, international standards. That's a little bit more international. And with that, this is something that the world or everyone can generally agree with. And then you can have regulations in domestic jurisdictions. So that regulations and standardization is something that a lot of government is working on right now. And what we're going to see in the future? Likely we're going to see tokenized securities. So once the government understands, okay, what are the risks involved? What can we do with smart contracts? How is it beneficial? How is tokenization good? Then we can probably see more tokenized securities coming into place. So bonds being tokenized or property being tokenized, and they can be defined as securities. The other thing is, I talk a lot about economics, I talked a lot about engineering, and there you can probably see a huge mishmash or cross-pollination of ideas and skill sets from different kind of domains, and this will definitely start to emerge a lot stronger in the future to come. And lastly, I really am very bullish on this, where DeFi will dominate traditional finance, because DeFi is not about replacing traditional finance. DeFi is looking at, okay, this is what traditional finance has done, it's good at, and DeFi gives us new technology, new innovation opportunities to improve on the things that are old school by then. So DeFi will dominate traditional finance, but it will not completely overtake traditional finance. Traditional finance will still exist for a reason, and it will be a lot more collaboration and partnerships with traditional finance. But because DeFi is so much more efficient, DeFi is looking at so much more innovative stuff, that a lot of funds will start going into DeFi. But traditional finance will still exist in Web 3.0 that we look at. So that's it. I go in depth into a lot of different kind of economics, into a lot of different kind of understanding of protocols, not from the technical speculation part or pricing financial speculation part, but really deep dive into understanding the mechanisms, understanding the incentives, understanding how all these economic systems work for these kind of projects. So if there's a lot of free content that I create, and I create at least one new episode every single week, you can go to youtube.com/c/economics design or scan the QR code to check more information out. And there's a lot of content out there. So once again, I'm Lisa, and I'm the founder of Economics Design. And we do a lot of different things, educating, we have books, we have newsletters. It's all about educating and empowering people. Because this space, as I mentioned, is very, very, very complicated. There's so many things to learn. There's so many unknowns that comes out every single day. So what I'm doing is to unpack that, to make it easier for you to understand, and to make sure that you know what you're putting your money into. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully that gives you a little bit more information of what is going on in the DeFi space.
Outstanding. Thank you, Lisa. That was very good. I really like the matrix that you put together that kind of gives you the categories of DeFi and its evolution. We have a couple questions from the audience. The first one is from James. He asks, why couldn't you create perpetual derivatives in traditional finance?
That's true. So there are some inefficiencies. For example, a lot of things are settled T+2 days, whereas in DeFi it's settled instantly. So there are a lot of regulations that don't allow that to happen. Plus technology as well. I don't know to what extent the technology of futures is done, because it is really just pairing two different kind of parties. Whereas in perpetual futures, you have different pools, and you're always trading with the contract instead of individuals. So in traditional finance, an individual can just decide to pull out, and in DeFi, you've got these pools that always exist, where you'll be trading against the pool.
Hope that was clear. Jennifer asks, which organizations are working on international standards, and how far away are they from being launched right now?
So there are so many. There is, I think IEEE is doing that. I know, so I'm part of one of the groups in the UN. It's called ITU, International Telecommunications Union, and there we have global digital currencies. We're partnering with Stanford University to create standards around global digital currencies. So I can definitely say a lot more about that. And the rest of them is just scattered all over the place. There are a lot of organizations working on it. Yeah.
Great. And we think we have time for one more quick question here. Matt asks, what do you think the time frame will be for tokenization of asset classes, especially like real estate?
Well, because I do quite a bit of work in the standardization space, so I understand how slow regulation goes. And as much as we have the technology, we have the tools, we have the innovation and the ideas and mechanisms to get there, the regulations will take quite some time. And it's not that regulators are bad. You know, regulators actually exist for a reason, because they want to protect regular people like you and me. And so it's not so much about how long it will take. It's more of how quickly will they understand the different risks involved, and how can regulation protect us against that risk. So I think that is more important and more of the key, and one of the obstacles in getting this moving faster.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you very much, Lisa. That was a very informative talk. It was very in depth. I think a lot of people got a lot of take on that. And I have some more questions. I wish I could ask more, but we're right up against the wire here. So if you haven't already, please visit Lisa's website or her Substack newsletter at economicsdesign.com. And we look forward to more research from you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So we have Tasha from Alpha Finance coming soon. Just waiting to get her on board, and there she is. I will drop off. You're on mute, Jim.
Yeah, we're going to. That was a great talk. Thank you, Lisa, for that. We're going to compile. I'm getting messages from people asking about the slide decks. We're going to compile everybody's slide deck into one big, fat, juicy PDF and send that out hopefully by Monday. We just want to get all the speakers the chance to do their presentation, and then we'll collect the slide decks and compile it. And organize it and put maybe a table of content around it and send it out to everybody that registered via Eventbrite. So our next speaker is Tasha from Alpha Finance. Very, very excited for to have you here. Tasha, please tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Alpha Finance, a little bit about what Alpha Finance is, and then your topic that you're going to cover today, what you're going to be covering for us. Thank you. And then we'll have some questions at the end.
Yeah, so nice meeting you, everyone, and excited for this. So, a bit about myself and Alpha Finance as well. So I actually came from more of a traditional finance background. So I studied economics at UC Berkeley, and then I started my career in investment banking in San Francisco and then in London. And then I pivoted to join Tencent, which is one of the largest tech firm from China, as a product manager. And then I pivoted to enter the blockchain world, and then it's a rabbit hole since. So pretty much I started at Band Protocol as a head of strategy, and then I spotted a lot of gaps in DeFi, not just on the product level, but on how products are being built, DeFi security as well, and many angles. So that's when I left Band Protocol and also start Alpha Finance with the co-founder Nipun. So that's a bit about me and a bit about Alpha. What it is you can think of it as a DeFi lab. What that means is we're incubating a lot of innovative DeFi products that will capture unaddressed demand. So you can think of it as we are always on the lookout, understanding the industry to see what else is missing in DeFi to really move the industry forward. And that's what we're going to build. And pretty much the end goal of it for this year, right, is to build out the whole Alpha ecosystem out in DeFi that will consist of multiple innovative DeFi products that will work together and really achieve one main goal to maximize the returns for users, but also help minimize the downside risks in the most easy way. So that's the end goal for this year. And then, once we are able to build a strong Alpha ecosystem out in DeFi, then that's when we shift and really look beyond DeFi and see how we can innovate and bring this strong ecosystem out to traditional finance. So yeah, that's a bit about Alpha Finance, and more about the topic today is the DeFi Super App. So that's going to be explaining more on the Alpha ecosystem and why we think it's one of the pretty interesting ecosystem.
Okay, fantastic. So you have a slide deck that you want to share with us?
Yeah, should I share my screen or I sent you the deck as well?
You can. Yeah, you can. No, you can share it. There's the share button on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, you see that, the share screen button?
Yep.
It should be the third one, yeah. Perfect. Yep, we can see it. Great, fantastic.
Okay, so I've touched upon some of these already. So let me just skip into this image. So this is the vision that we have towards the end of the year, right, in terms of the whole Alpha ecosystem. Let me give a bit more on the details of these particular products later on. I just want to give the high level picture first. And I think the key thing of this is that you will see that each product will grow in its own area. Some of them might be on multiple chains, some of them might be on only Ethereum, some of them might be only on L2. So it really depends on where it fits best. And I think that's the nice thing of it, that we're not limited and bound by anything much, because we're pretty innovative and always going to be on the lookout for new opportunities. So for instance, with Alpha Homora, which is the first ever leveraged yield farming product in DeFi, we first launched on Ethereum, which has got significant usage, and then once we spotted more demand in other chains, we actually are moving and adding Alpha Homora to other chains as well. So starting with Binance Smart Chain, which we just announced yesterday that we're launching Alpha Homora V1 on Binance Smart Chain. So that's pretty much the big picture of each product. But then one thing that's really important is how you can see here that each product are actually linked together. So that's the main thing that we aim to achieve as well, in terms of making sure that each product actually adds something to each other, and you will benefit more from using multiple products in Alpha ecosystem as opposed to using just one product, right? So just to give you an example, right? So Alpha X is a completely different product from Alpha Homora. You can think of it as, an area B. Alpha Homora is in area A. And I'm going to go into what A and B means later on, so just not to get into the detail too much. So A and B are actually somewhat interrelated, and those who use A will benefit from having Alpha X being launched, because we will have the link and pretty much an easy way for Alpha Homora users to benefit from Alpha X being live as well. So that's the goal that we plan to do for all the products, and not just Alpha X and Alpha Homora, right? So yeah, I think that's the high level that I wanted to share. And then now that we go deeper into each of the product itself, I think one thing to realize is, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to spot market gaps and what we call the unaddressed demand in DeFi, because that's how we really help innovate and push the industry forward, to spot new market gaps, to really create a new segment in DeFi. So, and that's what we did with Alpha Homora. So before we launched Alpha Homora and even thought of this concept of leveraged yield farming, which did not exist then, we saw these two main problems. The first one is that there are a lot of ETH holders just bearing low lending interest rate on ETH. And it has been taken as a fact that lending rate on ETH is low, but I'm sure everyone wants high lending rate on ETH, right? So if we can find a way to innovate on the borrowing side, then this is one huge market that we can capture and really set it as apart from typical lending protocols as well. So vice versa, another market gap that we spot is that a lot of yield farmers are still searching for higher yields, and the APY for yield farming has been coming down. So, when mixing the two, we came up with, okay, hey, what if we create a lending protocol that actually, is specific to one particular use case for borrowing? So that's how we came about with the idea of leveraged yield farming, which means that the borrowers are actually paying high lending or high borrowing interest rate on borrowing these ETH out, but they are actually getting more yields from doing more activities on yield farming, and getting more trading fees, APY, and everything as well. So with Alpha Homora, we actually does everything for them. So from the leveraged yield farmer side, they would just come in, select the pool that they want to yield farm, enter the assets they want to supply as the initial liquidity, enter the leverage, and you can see the leverage is correlated to how much ETH they are adding to their position, and then they click farm. So all of the steps with regards to borrowing, with regards to the actual steps to yield farm, are taken care of by the protocol itself. So because of this, the lenders are getting really high lending interest rate on ETH. So, that's how we also make sure that we are capturing various market gaps at the same time. So as a result of that, now there are three unique propositions to Alpha Homora, because we were able to spot the market gaps that are really, really huge, right? One is not only that it's the first and the only protocol on Ethereum now that offers leveraged yield farming product. It also is the protocol that offers the highest lending interest rate on ETH. Typically, it stays around 8 to 10%. But usually, when the utilization rate goes up pretty high, then the rate also goes up accordingly, right? And just to give you a benchmark, typically the lending rate on ETH is less than 1%. So it's about 8 to 10 times higher. And then the lending itself, we actually innovate on here as well. So I don't want to go into too much of a detail on this, but then what's interesting is that we actually use the concept of both fixed and variable interest rates. So this is something actually new to a lending protocol as well, as typically it's either all variable or all fixed. But for us, it's actually parts of it are variable and parts of it are fixed. And that's the only model. And it has been working pretty well. So if you have any questions on this, feel free to ask me later on as well. So that's the one that I was talking about. So that's the variable part, and that's the fixed part. And that's actually where the optimal utilization rate we want to achieve. So it's a range instead of just one point. So yeah, and with this, Alpha Homora has grown pretty fast as well. We launched back in October 2020, and it has reached $1 billion in 4 months. Right now, it has come down quite a bit. Right now, we're at 870, and then the next target we're actually going for 2 billion, and going forward. And I think this comes from us always on the lookout for new opportunities. So even though the product has been launched, it will always gonna find new angles to innovate itself. And I think that's the beauty of DeFi too, where everything's very fluid and innovative, as Lisa was saying earlier. So with Alpha Homora V2, what we're doing that's even taking lending further, taking leverage farming further, are a number of things. But you can think of it as 4 main things that really stand out comparing to V1. And really much what the end goal of this is going to be is that Alpha Homora V2 will be the go-to leveraged yield farming protocol in DeFi. And vice versa, it would be the go-to lending protocol in DeFi because it can offer the higher lending interest rate on multiple assets and not just ETH. So don't want to go into too much detail either, as I'm not sure if how familiar you are with Alpha Homora V1 already or not. So if you have particular questions, I can go into that at the end. Now with another product, and I think this is where it becomes more interesting with the whole concept of building a DeFi super app and the whole ecosystem out, is that you are not bound to just innovate in one area. Let's say we launch Alpha Homora and we're bound to just innovate for that product, right? We actually are thinking at a bigger picture and see what else can we add to the ecosystem that actually makes the ecosystem bigger, but also benefits the existing products too. So I think this is actually something that not only us that we have started doing, but other protocols are starting to build an ecosystem out. So a lot of times the other protocols are usually started out from one product, and then they saw more opportunities, and then they really think that adding a suite of product would actually work as an ecosystem better than just one product innovating alone, right? So with AlphaX, it's a decentralized, non-order book, perpetual swap trading market. So all of this might sound pretty confusing, but this is I'm just gonna break it down for you. So it's a decentralized trading product, and then with this trading product, you are actually can take leverage as well. So let's say you can go up to 10x on various trading assets, right? And then the unique thing of this is that you don't have to have that asset to be able to trade it, because everything is all based on the price. And that's what perpetual swap is really all about, that it doesn't really require you to have Bitcoin to actually trade futures or perpetual swap contract on Bitcoin, but everything is all settled in USDT. Another thing about here, non-order book, is it doesn't require the two sides of the book, so those who want to sell and those who want to buy, to bootstrap liquidity. So this is a concept of the AMM, or the automated market making in derivatives market. So that might be that might be a bit confusing, but this is actually a part of the derivatives market that Lisa was talking earlier, and we think that this will grow really, really fast, especially with derivatives this year. I think a lot of the foundational DeFi protocols, let's say like lending, AMM themselves, have been built out and really set a good standard since last year. So now we're actually at the step where we're building out the derivatives area of DeFi. And what's interesting about AlphaX is we have to understand who we're targeting, and that's how we will determine how we're going to build the product. And I think this is the most important thing for us in terms of how we approach building products. I cannot speak for the other projects, but I think this really gives a sense of who you're really targeting and how you're going to build it and how you're going to present the product, right? So if you think of a perpetual swap product, you might just think of targeting current perpetual swap traders who are trading on the centralized exchanges. So instead of doing that, we actually are targeting less of this group, but more of the other groups because of various reasons. And I think, different protocols and different projects have different opinions. This is our opinion in a sense that there are a lot of reasonings behind that we may not be able to capture all of these groups, and this group might just want to stay in the centralized way of trading because of the big positions that they do, because of the drawbacks on blockchain at the current landscape. So that's why we are focusing more on these two. So this second bucket here is the current alpha Homor users who pretty much they are taking the leveraged yield farming positions on ETH already. So that means that they are exposed to a certain side of leverage, right? So let's say they take 2x on ETH, they might be in a position of shorting ETH, exposed to that position. So what AlphaX is going to help is it will really allow them to be able to hedge themselves out and open the opposite long position. And we will have a really simple UI to pretty much guide them through so that they would be able to finally be at a market neutral leveraged position. So, that's the first users that we're targeting. And the second users here would be pretty much a new target group in perpetual swap trading. So these are the groups that we think have a lot of potential to really not just grow AlphaX, but grow perpetual swap trading on chain in general. So these are pretty much people who haven't traded perpetual swap but want to trade, and pretty much they are in DeFi already, so they want to trade on blockchain in a decentralized way, but they think or haven't got the time to really dig deeper into perpetual swap trading because it's actually pretty complicated with funding rate mechanism, with auto rebalancing, and etc. So in order for us to really capture this new user group, we are innovating on how we build the product. So then we dig deeper into understanding what do these users want in using a perpetual swap product, right? And we make sure to have that on our product. So pretty much the first thing that we do is we bake in the funding rate payments into the quoted price. So if you're familiar with perpetual swap trading already, you would know that you would have to pay the funding rate payments every 8 hours or whatever frequency they are set. And funding rate payments would actually have an impact on how much you gain or lose on your positions. What we do here is we actually bake that in on the price itself. So when you trade on AlphaX, the only things that matter would be the entry price that you buy or open your position at, and the exit price that you typically just sell or close your position. So the experience is actually quite similar to spot trading. So I think by making it as simple as possible on the user side, that will actually allow more people in DeFi to just enter these derivatives through AlphaX. The second thing that we do here, making sure that whatever we do, even for the product level, right, we always try to think of interoperability first. And I think that is the key thing in DeFi and the key thing to build out the ecosystem out. So with AlphaX, how we're doing that is through this tokenized positions. So once you open a position on AlphaX, your positions are being tokenized to ERC20 token. And with ERC20 token, you can further use this token in various protocols that we will drive the utility of these tokens. So just to give you an example, with, let's say, a 2x long ETH ERC20 token, we would have that market to allow you to just buy that token with USDT, let's say on Uniswap or SushiSwap. So that is already one use case of that token. And what that means on the user's end is that if you want to be exposed to that position, you don't even have to come to AlphaX. You can just use your USDT to buy directly on Uniswap or SushiSwap. And I think that would be a pretty significant growth for AlphaX and DeFi, and perpetual swap on chain in general too. So yeah, I think I've touched upon the 3 products here that we have been sharing to the community. And of course, there are a lot more that we are working internally. So as mentioned, this is the vision that we have towards the end of the year. So we are taking this moment really to craft out the alpha ecosystem that we want to have it, be the main ecosystem in DeFi. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Tasha. We do have some questions. Let me try to read out some of the questions. If you do have any questions for Tasha, please ask it in the questions section. On the extreme right of your AirMeet screen, there's a questions icon. Submit your question there. We have a question from Solomon. How are you about to achieve 8% interest rate on ETH when it's 1 to 2% elsewhere?
Good question. Let me show you this slide. Okay. So this is the interest rate model that we have. And you can see here it's fixed right here, and it's variable on the 2 ends. So what this whole thing is saying is that the borrowing interest rate will depend on how much ETH is being borrowed out in the pool. So, and these are the percentages, right? So let's say ETH is being borrowed out at 60% right now. So that would be the rate that the borrowers are paying. So correlate to about 8%. So if the utilization rate, which is correlated to here, stays around 80 to 90%, the borrowing interest rate that the borrowers are paying is fixed at 10%. And then once it goes beyond 90%, then that's when the borrowing interest rate would be variable again, and really go steep up to 50%, because we don't want to have it be stable at around here, because this will not be friendly for lenders, as they may not be able to withdraw out, as a lot of the funds are being borrowed. So that's why we have to steep up really, really high. So the nice thing of this is that because of 2 things, we are able to generate pretty high lending interest rate on ETH for lenders. The first thing is that we actually, keep this rate flat within 80 to 90%. So this means that this is actually the optimal place for borrowers to be. As if they were to go beyond this, they would have to pay a lot more. If they are below this, that's fine too, but they are actually not maximizing their yields from yield farming. So that's the number 1. The number 2 is that they are actually getting a lot higher yields on yield farming comparing to the borrowing interest rate that they have to pay. So let me show you this slide. You can see here that the APY here, which includes yield farming APY times the leverage, trading fees APY times the leverage, and additional alpha APY a little bit here, totaling to 200% for ETH sushi pool. So that means that if you have to pay here 7.5% borrowing interest rate for this 204%, they're more than willing to take that position. So that this is why there has been pretty high demand on ETH borrowing on Alpha Homora. But one thing to note is that yield farming has some risks to it. So make sure that you understand the risks associated with yield farmings before you go into open your position on Alpha Homora.
Okay, great. Thank you. We got a couple more questions coming in from Josh. When will borrowing be available again for a V2? When do you expect new pools? Thanks. Okay, great. And then I have a question from Roman. Does a perpetual swap come with the option to demand delivery for whoever is long?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Does a perpetual swap come with the option to demand delivery for whoever is long?
So this is different from options. Note that there is no actual trading of the underlying asset itself. So everything is based on the price of that asset. So you're actually trading a price of that asset. So let's say you're longing on ETH, you're actually longing on the price of ETH. So as a result, there's no actual settlement of transferring ETH or BTC to each other towards whenever you want to close the position out.
Okay. And then we have another question from CK. Chong, will Alpha expand the lending functionality and directly lend ETH USDT to users with enough collateral?
So you mean, just to understand, and I mean, just to confirm that I understand correctly, lending on Alpha Homer V1 is limited to ETH. Lending on Alpha Homer V2 are, with including ETH, stable coins, and then going forward we'll have more assets when we relaunch as well. So with that, lending is separate from yield farming. So if you have a collateral, let's say if you have your lending assets lending in ETH, USDT, and DAI on Alpha Homer V2, those assets cannot be used as collateral on the yield farming side. And I think that's actually just to keep it pretty simple and separate on the contract level, as things can get pretty complicated and may be quite a pretty big thing to work through.
Okay, great. And then we have a bold question here from somebody trying to get a job with you, I think. And are you still open for a business development position at Alpha?
Yeah, we are. So, if you are interested, please feel free to send your resume and some information about yourself to hiring@alphafinance.io.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got a bunch more questions. Let me just see here. Let me just pick one from Anna because she asked another question which I didn't get answered for her, so I owe her an answer. What is the math, logic, formulaic approach behind fixing the fixed rate if it is only dependent on the demand supply and is not driven by other factors? How are you arriving at the fixed rate?
Got it. So it comes down to multiple things, right? First thing is we first determine where we want that fixed region going to be. So internally, we believe that the optimal point should not just be at one point, because technically, if that's the optimal point and you want everyone to be at that point, it's impossible to have everyone be at one point all the time, right? So that's why we actually extend it from just one point, which is a typical, mechanism that like other lending protocols use. So we expand from that one point to a range. And then, next question become, where do we want that range? Then we believe that the most optimal range will be at around 80 to 90% utilization rate. And that's because if it's below that, then it is not using the assets in the lending pool to the maximum capacity. And if it's beyond 90%, then that would put the lenders at risk of having some issue withdrawing the funds whenever they want to. So we believe that, the range would be 80 to 90%. And then the next question become then, what's the borrowing interest rate that we want to set, right? And I think that comes down from the industry standards, and typical lending rate is at 1%. And we believe that if we go 10x higher than that, so 10%, we would actually achieve a pretty significant, competitive advantage. And yeah, that's how we derive at that interest rate model.
Okay, great. We're running out of time. Tasha, thank you so much for the fantastic presentation. Very, very informative. We learned a lot about Alpha. It seems like you're doing some really exciting work. We really look forward to the future of your organization and team. Obviously, we will be in touch. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. So, okay, move on to our next talk. Our next talk is going to be from Harvest Finance. The person who's going to be presenting, it will be presenting anonymously and is known as quote unquote Red. Is that correct, Red? Is that the right way? Am I presenting you the right way?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep, great. So as much as you want to tell us about yourself and what you're doing with Harvest Finance, what your role is, I'm also very curious as to the desire to stay anonymous. I know some of why, but I'd love for the audience to learn about what's happening in the space, which would cause you or encourage you to be anonymous. And then if you have a slide deck, please just share it with us. You're going to be teaching us how the basics of yield farming. And you're going to be introducing us to that. So I think we have a lot to learn from you. So please take it away.
Sure, awesome. So yeah, I'm Red. That's my pseudo-anonymous handle. I'm not fully anonymous. I would have had a webcam for you guys today. I'm fully apologize. It just wasn't activating. I did set a profile picture. For some reason, it's not showing up. So I'm not trying to hide my face from you guys.
Okay, great.
Me specifically, again, I'm just a community manager. I'm actually not a developer with the project. I stumbled across the project as they started up as their own yield farm platform. Just joined like any other person to figure out the project, see if I could put some investment there, money there to make some money myself. Just loving it so much, and me just kind of naturally loving to share information, kind of why I'm sitting here today talking to everybody here. They made me a chat moderator. And then from there, just, over the past 6 months, I've just kind of been pitching in more and more and more. And now I'm kind of a community representative, and I act as, kind of a little bit of the face for the company. But again, I'm just a guy. The developers themselves are anonymous. I only know them through their fully anon handles through Discord chat. So it is a very unique situation how Harvest itself operates, sort of like a DAO kind of commune kind of platform. But yeah, definitely here today, I just want to give everybody kind of an education on the space on what yield farming is, and then just kind of some of the things or the minefield you may have to walk through a little bit that comes along with yield farming that everybody should be aware of.
So when you say you're enjoying this, that means you're making money, I assume, because you would not be enjoying this if you were not making money.
Actually, no, that's not true whatsoever. I'm a moderator for Monolith, another very big project in DeFi. Never collected a nickel and pay for that from them. I've been doing that for 3 years. So I definitely just very much enjoy the space, interacting with everybody. Yeah, I do invest the space in various projects. I do hold some tokens into Harvest Finance, but I make my money more indirectly as opposed to, hey, give me some money so I can go represent your project. That is not what this is at all. I know what I do. Again, I only represent like 1 or 2 projects, and that's like really driven by the love and passion for that specific project.
Okay, great, fantastic. So do you have a slide deck? There's an icon on the bottom to share this. Share that. We can get started.
Sure, let's click that. Oh wait, can we do that? Let's do that. Awesome. All right, so this is an introduction to yield farming with me, Red, at Harvest Finance. And so again, this is going to be more like an ELI 5, explain like 5 yield and what that means in the decentralized finance ecosystem. So what is yield farming? Various block applications offer customers incentives for using or providing liquidity to their platform. Yield farming is the intent to earn those incentives for a profit, and can be as simple as depositing funds to an application and waiting over a period of time to collect your rewards. So instead of holding just Ethereum stagnantly in your wallet, you could be passively earning every single day. So a lot of people, maybe they're joining into crypto for the first time. They grab some Bitcoin or Ethereum, as the 2 major kind of coins out there. And they just kind of set those aside and sit on them and wait for the market to appreciate. But again, crypto can be very volatile. It doesn't always go up. It can go, way down, whatever it is. So yield farming, you can actually put that Ethereum to work instead of just kind of sitting there, and you can deposit it at one of these applications who hand out rewards. Your Ethereum can sit there relatively safely while you're gaining money on top of that. So decentralized applications like an exchange, referred to as a DEX, a decentralized exchange, are basically just computer code that live on the internet, and they lack a central party of financial backers to provide liquidity that a typical bank does. These DEXs rely on individual users, you and me, to deposit funds into pools of liquidity, and by collectivization, those pool deposits act as a bank. So if you think about it, if you're going to go on a trip to Europe, you have a bunch of USD in your hand, you need to go into a bank or you need to go to some exchange facility where there's a person sitting behind glass. You hand them your dollars. They have a big pile of money sitting back there because they have financial corporations and the government backing them up, right? And then they rip you off by giving you a terrible exchange rate and charging you a bunch of fees. Well, these decentralized exchanges, again, just a bunch of code on the internet, there's nobody sitting there behind the code. So in order to be able to provide an easy swap between USD or euros or whatever the cryptocurrency is, they need people like us to inject liquidity pooled all together, and we become almost that pseudo bank. By providing continuous incentives to depositors, the DEXs in return have a reliable source of liquidity without relying on a singular centralized entity like a corporation or government. So again, nobody can own them, and like Bitcoin, because there is no name behind it per se or a singular person, you can't really shut it down. So what are these incentives? How do these exchanges pay them out? So when a project like a DEX launches, it may have pre-programmed into its code a reward token, which gives the holder a share of all trading fees collected by the platform. If that platform is popular and does a high volume of trades, in theory, that token could become very valuable on the open market as it continuously sends a stream of revenue to its holder. So there's exchanges like Uniswap, 1inch, Curve Finance, again, decentralized exchanges. You as the bank providing your money there. These exchanges can offer very, very low fees instead of like a 10-15% gouge that a bank may charge you. You may only pay 1% or less performing a swap on these exchanges. Well, again, if there's no central bank to collect that fee, who's that fee going to? And that's going to us, the individual depositors who are leaving money there and acting as the bank. So again, that's where that incentive comes from, is partially from the fees, in addition to the reward token that they're handing out, which may also collect some of the fees. So let's say that the fee is 1% for charge for a swap to a customer. Let's say 0.5% goes directly to the people providing liquidity to the pool. The other 0.5% goes to people that are holding the token. So as a yield farmer, by simply providing or depositing your idle funds with an incentivized project, you can collect these tokens for free and grow your worth much faster than holding in a wallet alone. So again, on Curve Finance, you deposit your liquidity there, just sit back and relax, and you're slowly accruing CRV tokens, which have a value. They may be $1 today and be worth $50 tomorrow, because suddenly Curve is becoming the most dominant exchange platform in Ethereum. So here's kind of a simple graph to kind of just illustrate everything that I explained to you right there. So here's you, the farmer. You have some money and you deposit it to the DEX liquidity pool. Follow the little dotted line, and it's your money sitting here with everybody else's money in one giant pool. You lock in your funds, basically called staking, and then you're passively collecting the money that's streaming here from the liquidity pool. Here, a customer can just walk up to this program and say, here's my USD. And because there's various amounts of money from all these depositors, it can simply say, without somebody sitting behind a counter, here is the exchange rate for USD to euro minus your 1% fee. And it's all automated, happening within seconds. And again, the feedback loop is all this money is flowing back to you, the quote-unquote yield farmer. So what are the risks? Why isn't everybody doing this? So decentralized finance is a cutting edge of the financial revolution, which fully empowers the individual. Without the influence of a central bank or government, you are in full control of your assets. But full control also means if you lose all of your money, there is no FDIC or government institution to complain to. So a great analogy is think of the American gold rush as an example. Freedom to stake your claim, get some free property, some gold, hopes of a new future. But what happened? There was lawless perils of robbery, scammers, and snake oil salesmen, and that very, very much applies to crypto. The risks, a rug pull or scam. Just today, a $25 or $25 million scam happened to a project called Meerkat on the Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, on the Binance Smart Chain. You can see here, picture, Pickle was attacked, Cover Protocol was attacked. So there definitely is a risk of these new farms popping up, them trying to lure you in, and then your money can be stolen by either a hack or the developers themselves attacking the project and taking all your money. Another one would be fly-by-night projects. Some projects, because of the code is all public on the blockchain, you can simply photocopy or what's called a fork and replicate another project, tweak a few things in the code, change its name, and suddenly you have BlurbFi instead of CurveFi, right? And it's basically the same exact thing, but they've just changed the web interface. But the token will go from 0, and this is all within a 24-hour period, it goes from 0 to 6, all the way back to 0 again. So imagine the poor guy buying up here, these farm tokens are engaging in here, and now losing pretty much all of your money. So again, that's kind of with either the fly-by-night or kind of just being a worthless token Ponzi scheme in the end that you're farming. Then the other big deal is your cost versus reward, APR versus APY. Every single farm in crypto displays their figure as APY, which is a figure of compounding. You deposit $5,000, those reward tokens you earn must be sold to add back to your original $5,000, so it grows and you begin earning on your $5,500. Otherwise, you're earning APR, which is constantly based on the $5,000. So a 50% APR would be $7,500 total earning over a year, or converted to APY, which is 64%, is $8,200. The problem is there is a large cost associated with compounding, and we'll go to the next screen. But why I say this is a risk is because, again, every farm is displaying an APY, but not telling you how much it actually costs to get there. So, individuals farmer life in quote-unquote 5 easy steps, and you kind of saw that in that flow chart I showed earlier. You need to deposit your liquidity, you need to stake and lock them in, you need to wait a defined period of time so your rewards build up, so then you can claim them. That's the basic 4 steps I showed you in the flow chart. But to compound, you must sell those rewards and then repeat the steps of depositing and locking them in. The problem is when you're interacting with a decentralized network like Ethereum, each engagement with the smart contracts costs money. And during times of high traffic, that can be exceptionally expensive, where within the last 2 weeks, it cost about $900 total to complete one compounding. So about $150 per step where you engage with the contract to complete your compounding. So if you happen to have $20,000 deposited at 100% APY, an amazing number, right? 100 times anything you'll ever get at a fiat bank, you're making about $266. So then if you wanted to perform a compound for the first week, hey, that's $900 in gas. I just lost $634. What's going on here? Again, this is an extreme figure, but even if I reduce this down to a third, it's still $300 and I would still be negative $34. So this is some of the difficulties and realizations that you need to understand with yield farming, that even though you may have these amazing APYs, it's not all that it seems. But this is where we invite all of you humble farmers to join us at Harvest Finance, because we try to make life much more simple for all of the users and negate all of the things that I just spoke about. So first, Harvest Finance is a yield farming aggregator where the process of farming rewards and compounding has been automated, and users can collectively pool their funds into farming strategies to dramatically reduce costs and improve earnings. So think carpooling for investing. By pulling thousands of users together and acting as one large whale depositor, that singular $900 cost to compound the pool amount is now shared by hundreds to thousands of users. Now, with a fraction of the cost, any user can experience the power of compounding. So all of those 6 steps I showed you, once you deposit your money, the system's doing it for you. You don't need to complete those steps. And instead of it costing you $900, even if there was only 100 users in the pool with you, it would only cost you $9 to do it. But there's actually thousands of people in that pool with you, so it's costing you fractions of a penny to perform this. So instantly your profits are dramatically shooting up, and now you're experiencing the power of compounding, which in the example before was 14% more than APR alone. So these numbers are just amazingly powerful through automation and carpooling with like-minded people. So remember those risks that we talked about, the scams, fly-by-night Ponzi? So before Harvest Finance rolls out any new strategy for farming, the developers always inspect for the highest levels of safety by reviewing the code of the projects that we're going to interact with. And by automatically selling the earned rewards to cash profit, there's no risk of overholding a worthless Ponzi or asset. So instead of each individual user having to research every new farm that appears in the wild, they can instead trust that Harvest is only deploying the safest and most productive strategies available. So pretty much every single day, or 2-3 times a week, a new farm is rolling out. And again, you have this Meerkat farm that rolled out within the past couple days, and now they've exit scammed and done a rug pull of $25 million, whatever it is, to the users there. How is you, as an individual user, going to know which ones are scams or not if you can't read code? That's one of the biggest challenges with yield farming, because once a new farm pops up, they may be offering us some crazy 1,000% APY, first come, first serve, and then you rush into the farm like a bunch of lemmings, right? And then you're falling off the cliff because you didn't know where you're kind of going. So what Harvest tries to do is it's trying to do the research and stay on the cutting edge of all these farms by looking at the code, using their expertise, trying to do their due diligence, say, yes, this project can't steal all of our money if we go deposit there en masse. And we don't need to worry about it being some crummy token that flies by night, because ultimately Harvest is just grabbing them, selling them, and giving you the profit instantly. So just quickly, if you came to Harvest Finance, this is on the left side kind of what it would look like, just in a bare minimum. All of our strategies are broken down into these groupings. So you can see stable coins, kind of the most basic thing in crypto. They try to peg 1-to-1 to the dollar, so you're not having to hold some, Bitcoin, which could be volatile and drop 15% overnight. And that's kind of what scares off a lot of quote unquote mainstream investors. But if an investor was able to say, hey, I can easily buy a digital dollar from Coinbase, the world's biggest exchange, deposit that digital dollar and make 28 times anything a fiat bank will ever give me, and I can do that within a couple clicks, how powerful and amazing is that, right? And then you can see some of the other more moderate to advanced strategies offering up to 62%. So I think that's just a very powerful tool that helps you, the user, engage in some of these really, really high returns within the DeFi space, working with other like-minded people to then fend off kind of a lot of those snake oil salesmen that I kind of mentioned in that wild west that we're experiencing in DeFi. So that's pretty much it. Do you got any questions for me?
Okay, thank you, Red. That's very, very informative. If anybody has any questions, please pop it off in the questions section. So a couple of questions. How does somebody using I have a question coming in via DM. How does somebody using MetaMask interact with, or can they interact with Harvest? How does that work? And can you show us a little bit of that? If that's
Sure.
possible?
Let me pull up Harvest real quick. Let's see if it'll let me share. All right, so this is basic. You guys can see the screen. This is my this.
No, you just cut out. I think we just lost Red. Okay, we do have our next speaker, who will be from Gnosis. Can we just check if he's ready to go, and we'll come back to Red. Hopefully, he'll be able to connect back in maybe later in the day to answer some of the questions that we're getting. See if we can get John in. Okay, we're just waiting for John from Gnosis to jump on board. So either John or Red. We'll take either one at this stage.
Hey guys, not sure what happened there. Where did we stop?
Hey, we lost you where you said, "Let me show you," and then boom, you showed us by disappearing.
Okay. Well, which screen was that? Was that Harvest Finance or the medium?
No, we didn't. We didn't even get to a screen.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to try it again?
Yeah. Let me see. Let me share Chrome tab. Can you see that now?
Not. It's coming up. There we go.
Okay.
Yep, we see
Yeah,
it.
sorry about that. I was sitting there blabbing away. Okay. Well, let's go to Harvest Finance real quick. All right, so this is what Harvest Finance looked like initially. So you kind of saw this. Basically, $635 million in deposits makes us one of the largest aggregators. About $8 million a month are going to depositors. 30% of that goes to people that hold the farm token. You can see here over 9% in Ethereum, just pure Ethereum deposits. That's total. So you can see the breakdown of what the assets return when you kind of hover over each one of them. I was kind of blabbing on about what's so cool here is you can buy tokenized versions of Netflix stocks. It's called mirrored assets, and they follow the price of Netflix. You can deposit those tokenized versions and receive up to 220% APY on those. So some of these just offer an incredible rate of return. So you're kind of asking about if I can demo MetaMask. When I was saying it, unfortunately, I'm not set up to show it without kind of giving away my own personal information on MetaMask. But what I will invite everybody to do is you can go to redemption without the second e.medium.com. And these are all my own writings about Harvest Finance. And one of them specifically is 6 steps specifically on joining the yield farming revolution, Harvest Finance. It walks you through everything from setting up a brand new MetaMask wallet to buying USDC at Coinbase, sending it to your own personal wallet, and then depositing at Harvest Finance. So made it very simple, explain like I'm 5 version. So anybody from Aunt Matilda to your teenage son can, get deposited at Harvest Finance.
Okay, and we do have some questions.
Sure.
Red, one is, what audits and measures are you taking to ensure your smart contracts are secure from hacks?
Great question. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, here's our friendly farmer you saw. You can see all the various audits that we've had. And again, hacks, it's a great question because hacks are something that are very scary within the world of cryptocurrency, and they're constantly happen. Like I mentioned with Meerkat, just happening today. So try to do due diligence constantly. This least authority is the newest audit. So we're 6 months in and we're still asking for audits on everything that we do. We have a new product that's kind of been waiting because we just need to really make sure it's thoroughly perfected before deploying. So safety number one, and the safety of users' funds is really important at Harvest Finance.
Okay, great. And then another question along the same vein, are there any steps taken to prevent economic exploits? So this is not really smart contract exploits, but more of a systemic attack, right? Economic exploits. These are harder to catch versus code issues. And this is from Sam.
Yeah. So like flash loans would be one of them specifically. So since those have kind of been happening, since Harvest had been like a focus of one of those attacks, it kind of helps you learn how are these other systems getting attacked and what can we do to deploy. So one of the biggest things, like specifically for flash loans, you can't deposit and withdraw all in the same block, right? So a flash loan generally requires you to complete the transaction all in one block on the blockchain. So if you prevent the attacker from being able to carry out their attack all in one block, that pretty much cuts it off at its knees.
Okay, fantastic. And then we'll take one last question, which is, what is Grain and how does it relate to Harvest? I'm assuming it's a token.
So just mentioning that like Harvest was the focus of attack. So back when I think like Harvest was about 2 months old, about $1 billion in assets, somebody did a flash attack on Harvest and the interaction between Curve. And basically they are able to trick the interaction between Curve and Harvest to make the peg of the dollar tokens broke off, right? So long story short, the Grain token Harvest issued as a repayment to all those people that lost money to ensure basically they didn't take a financial loss, right? So over time, Harvest Finance is continuously buying back those tokens from the user and returning funds to them from the profits generated by the system. So again, just great questions about hacks in general, because they are just very rampant, and no matter how strongly you build your system, you can get hacked. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, the gold standard in yield farming, the guys who kind of kicked it off, Wire and YFI, they were just hacked with a flash attack alone, or flash loan attack. So no matter how you try, you just have to continuously be vigilant. Like you said, we rolled out a 4th audit on the platform, because we're just constantly making sure that there's no new vectors that can attack us and impact user funds.
Okay, thank you, Red. That was fantastic. Really appreciate the tutorial. If you can post that link to what you just did, the MetaMask, on our chat, that'd be great.
Sure.
So I'm getting some messages for that. Okay, great. Next we have Gnosis. I'm going to hand over the steering wheel to Michael and John. Michael, all yours.
All right. Thank you, Jamil. Thank you, John.
Perfect. Am I good to get going?
All right, great. So John is from Gnosis. He's in business development there, and you'll see there's a share button below if you have a slide deck, if screen you want to share. And I'll let you take the steering wheel, and then once you finish, we'll do some Q&A and answer some questions.
Yeah, just one sec. I can't share my screen at the moment because there's system preferences. You guys don't have a version that you can display, or is that coming through right now?
Perfect. You're good.
I'm good. Great.
Yep.
Very good.
Alrighty.
All right. Perfect. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining here. My name's John, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the Gnosis Safe, as well as Gnosis Safe apps, which is essentially another gateway that you can use to access, the many different apps within decentralized finance. So, yeah, as many of you know, look, there's plenty of opportunity within DeFi, but at the same time, there's plenty of attack vectors that are in the space. We've seen definitely a lot of cases where there's been some, hacks, wallet hacks, or attack vectors targeted. So, yeah, I want to talk a bit about how you can use safe apps and use the Gnosis Safe in a way to interact with DeFi in a more secure fashion. Quickly, just as a quick intro, I lead out business development for the Gnosis Safe. If you have any questions or you want to continue the conversation, reach out to me on Twitter. That is my Irish name, Sean McEngish. So I'd advise you try and find John Ennis first. It's easier to spell. But yeah, just before I go into the Gnosis Safe and Safe apps, just a quick background on Gnosis as a company. We were born out of the birth of Ethereum, essentially. We started as a company in 2015, and the mission has always been to build essential infrastructure for DeFi. And we do this. We offer our own decentralized exchange in terms of the Gnosis protocol. But what I'm going to be talking about specifically here today is the Gnosis Safe, which is one of our other key products we have. And the Gnosis Safe is a self-custodial account to securely manage digital assets. It's a smart contract wallet where the user remains in complete control of their funds. And a lot of people are using the Gnosis Safe when they put security at their first fore in terms of their priority. And a lot of large funds, a lot of high net worth individuals, and a lot of projects are using the Gnosis Safe right now to collectively manage their funds. And say, for example, if they're in a team, it provides an access control mechanism that stops one team member acting maliciously and stealing all the funds. This is enabled through a couple of access control features that the Gnosis Safe has. And yeah, before I go into the Gnosis Safe directly, just a quick little education piece on the difference between smart contract wallets and externally owned accounts. So generally on blockchains, there's two ways to manage your funds. You can do it through an externally owned account, which is MetaMask, for example. MetaMask is an example of an externally owned account. And you can also look at smart contract accounts, smart contract wallets such as Gnosis Safe or Argent, for example. Both allow you to store assets and enable you to interact on the blockchain. But the key difference is that externally owned accounts have a private key tied to the wallet, as well as a seed phrase normally tied to the wallet. Whereas with a smart contract account, it's inherently a smart contract, so we can code in different access control permissions there. So I can define, instead of having one seed phrase and one private key to give access to my funds, I can define a multiple owners, or a multisig, for example, where I need a number of private keys to sign in order to gain access to the funds and send transactions. And that's essentially what the Gnosis Safe is, what I'm about to talk about in more detail now. What the Gnosis Safe enables multisig, which means you can define a set list of owners, such as Sarah, Alice, Bob in this example, and then you can assign a threshold of users that need to sign in order to access what's in the wallet. So, for example, say I said I state in my Gnosis Safe that I need 2 out of 4 people to sign in order to execute transactions. That would mean Sarah would have to use her MetaMask to sign, or Alice would use her Ledger, or Bob would use his Trezor, so on, so on. So that's what a multisig is, and that's what smart contract wallets enable. And quickly here, this is just a quick screenshot of the Gnosis Safe. This is our web interface. We have a web interface. We have a desktop downloadable app as well, and we also have a mobile app. And this is just the main. Kind of home screen once you create your safe. It takes about a minute to create a safe, and we display, the number of assets you have, and also what signer wallet you're signed in with. So once again, Gnosis Safe is a smart contract wallet, so you need various different signer wallets to log in, and you define which signer wallets are owners, which signer and once you're an owner, you can choose who to. Once you're an owner, you can sign transactions. Just to give you a quick example of who's using the Gnosis Safe right now, the parallel I draw is that anybody that has a high value amount of funds tends to use some sort of variation of a Gnosis Safe in their portfolio. So when it comes to centralized exchanges managing a lot of funds in their cold storage, Bitfinex uses a Gnosis Safe, but you also see a lot of DeFi protocols using Gnosis Safe. For example, when they're part of a treasury, or they use a Gnosis Safe to manage their grants program. MakerDAO and Uniswap are using that currently. But also, if you're a DAO, if you're a decentralized autonomous organization, and you need a set amount of signers to sign some key transactions associated with a wallet, normally the Gnosis Safe is used there as well. So yeah, we've got plenty of different use cases, but the Gnosis Safe is quite modular, so it suits an individual, or it can suit a team, or even a large DeFi project which has a lot of different participants involved. Just quick fact, some quick stats on the Gnosis Safe. Right now, the Gnosis Safe contracts manage around 16 billion worth of ERC20 and Ether assets. That's all stored on a self-custodial fashion. So Gnosis do not have access to these funds. This is all completely in the power of the users. And yeah, when we identified a couple of years ago that there is one DeFi problem that we've identified that the Gnosis Safe and smart contract wallets are running into right now. And that's the fact that DeFi apps, when they're first created, they're not necessarily optimized for smart contract wallets. They're mostly developed with externally owned account wallets in mind, such as MetaMask. And MetaMask is probably the number one. It is the number one wallet for the use of DeFi right now. And that's good from a usability perspective. But from a security perspective, these wallets have only one key and one seed phrase, which means that they have one single point of failure. even if you're using a hardware wallet, it still has that hardware wallet has one single point to be compromised, right? And the analogy I like to use about the value of multi-sigs and smart contract wallets is that Mike Belcher, he is the CEO of BitGo, I believe, and he created the first multi-sig for Bitcoin back in 2013. And he always used the analogy that if his child could get hands on it on one of his wallets and compromise the whole thing. So, for example, if his child could get his hands on his hardware wallet, or he could spill milk or spill water on his paper wallet that has seed phrases, then he's terrified of. He's just not comfortable with storing large amounts of funds on those wallets, and that's why he always, as a paramount, uses multi-sig wallets to store his funds. And this is the main reason why we developed safe apps and are continually building safe apps. And what are safe apps? They are third-party apps developed by third-party projects or third-party developers, and they allow users to interact with Ethereum protocols directly from our Gnosis Safe interface. The benefit of this is that these are optimized for multi-sig, and they leverage the benefits of smart contract accounts, which means you can batch transactions together, and you also inherently have multi-signature security and multi-signature optimized workflows, right? The safe apps are available in our community version right now. We don't take any fee to use. You just pay gas. And here's some of the current suite we have available right now that are live. So you can interact with 1inch. You can borrow and lend on Aave. You can stake liquidity tokens in Balancer. You can also you can send invoices through the request network. There's a lot of different features a lot of different apps we enable through Safe Apps, and we're continuously building. We've actually added 3 apps yesterday as a new product update. And when we built Safe Apps, we made it a clear goal of ours that it remains permissionless at all times. So if you have an app that's not on Safe Apps currently in our default view, all you have to do is simply add the DApp URL, as you can see in this quick little demo. You can click Add Custom App, and you can then use it through the Gnosis Safe interface from there. So we want to remain permissionless here as we build out these apps. And a quick example of what you can do: you can swap tokens on dexes such as Balancer and 1inch and SushiSwap. That's coming out, I think, very soon. So this is just a quick demo of how to actually swap tokens on Balancer right now inside your multisig. This was added yesterday. You can stake ETH with Lido. So if you have Ether sitting in your Gnosis Safe, you can simply start earning on that by staking using LidoFi. You can stake in liquidity pools. As I said, this is the Balancer liquidity pool safe app, and you can start earning some, annual percentage yield just straight from your Gnosis Safe. And there's of course others as well that I couldn't demo because there's almost about 40 different safe apps now at this stage. So you'll just have to. What I recommend is it takes about a minute to set up a Gnosis Safe. And you can see for yourself what you can do in terms of safe apps. But back to the main point of why we created this, it's that we've optimized for multisigs and optimized for the workflow that multisigs actually take place. You can see here this is a transaction. This is a transaction taken out from the Sablier app. The Sablier Safe app is an app to stream payments. And from here, you can see, when this is created and exactly who created it, who confirmed the transaction, and who also signed a transaction, and then executed thereafter. Because right now in some native dApps, if I had a multisig and I connected natively, it wouldn't have it. Sometimes the user experience wouldn't be optimized, since the app would time out because I'm waiting for someone else to sign the transaction, or the app would time out because I'm waiting for it to execute. So we've built these safe apps with multisig in mind, so none of those app timeouts happen, and each and every participant on the multisig knows what they're doing and can read the transaction, and has a nice user experience, right? Just a second feature about that the Gnosis Safe offers and the Safe Apps offer is that normally when you're interacting with DeFi via MetaMask, if you're doing a DeFi transaction such as swapping tokens or depositing into contracts, you'll get many different pop-ups to approve each transaction. Because these transactions can't be segregated, you actually have to approve each time when a different transaction happens under the hood. And that's not the best user experience. So what we do in the Gnosis Safe is we pool these transactions together or batch them per se. So, all the users can log in and understand, okay, this is what's happening here. We're approving this transaction. We're transferring this amount, and we have a collapsible view to go into detail when we can, rather than just, clicking through many different screens of pop-ups, essentially. Yeah, I've probably already discussed this, but just quickly to summarize the benefits. It's we flipped the model here. With Safe Apps, you actually log into your wallet first and then interact with all the DeFi applications. Whereas in the current landscape is that you navigate to the DeFi app and then log in to your MetaMask, to your Rainbow, to your Portis, for example. Whereas in the Safe Apps example, this is all within one dashboard, one browser, one interface, which is the Gnosis Safe. And again, back to that security aspect is that, it's not one single point of failure. You're using multisig to interact with DeFi, and you can use it as an individual who uses a MetaMask and cosigns with a hardware wallet, or of course you can use it in the team use case where you have multiple different team members agreeing and signing on transactions. Yeah, a little bit about the vision going forward. Gnosis are still a gatekeeper. We're still a central party because we're either the native DApp is hosting the infrastructure within our Safe Apps interface, or we're also hosting the Safe Apps interface. So definitely a big goal of ours is to decentralize the infrastructure completely. We have a couple of apps hosted on IPFS, but we want to get to a place where it's completely censorship resistant. It's curated by the community, and all the dApps are developed and maintained by the community rather than one project or a number of central projects in DeFi. And yeah, that's essentially the pitch, everyone. If there was one thing that I'd recommend everyone to do, if you're interested in the Gnosis Safe, is download a Gnosis Safe, download our desktop application or log in via the web. And yeah, it takes about 60 seconds to create a Gnosis Safe. All you pay is the gas costs. So yeah, I would definitely commend you to get your hands dirty and experiment with the Gnosis Safe and see if it meets your needs. Because at the end of the day, it's the most secure way to manage digital assets on Ethereum. We've got multiple bug bounties. We've been audited, countless amount of times, and we've actually gone through formal verification, which is actually a mathematical proof against our contracts. So it's why we're trusted with 16 billion worth of digital assets stored right now. So yeah, please reach out if you have any other questions or you want to continue the conversation.
Really outstanding, John. That's I wasn't aware of Gnosis Safe, and it's really interesting and helpful solution for the single points of failure. I was going to get into the cost. Also, we have a similar question from Michael. How does using Gnosis Safe increase the gas cost of a typical unoptimized transaction versus MetaMask? What about the optimized Safe App version?
Correct. Yeah. So I think this is a gas specific question, and so for typical ERC20 swaps, for example, token transfers, it's normally 20 GU, I think 20k worth of GU added to the cost of a transfer, and maybe and then when it's a contract interaction, it would be about, I think it's 40 to 60k added on, since you're using a smart contract wallet that's, not an externally owned account. So it's quite minimal actually when you convert that. But of course, when the gas costs are crazy right now, over 300, that can definitely have an impact. But once gas is underneath 100, then those costs are quite negligible. I can link a Help Center article into the chat as well. That gives you a full breakdown of the additional costs.
Great. So, walk me through a multi-sig solution. Are typically people who are using Gnosis Safe right now teams that have a number of team members that say a 3 out of 5 multi-signature setup, or who's usually using it? Is it the individual or is it a team normally?
So it works both ways. We generally see like the first use case that really got people excited was the team use case and the project use case. So if I'm simply setting up my own project, I have my own developers or my own founders. The first thing we would normally do is set up a multisig where we define who's actually part of our team, who are the owners, and then we say, okay, let's define the threshold. So if we signed, quite a high amount, if we did a lot of transactions on a daily basis, then maybe it should just be a 2 out of 4 or 2 out of 6 multisig. But if we had a lot of funds that are probably for a longer time and there's not a lot of interactions happening, then we can start bumping the numbers up. Have a 3 out of 4 multisig, a 3 out of 5, or a 4 out of 6. And then for the individual use case, we see a lot of people they would have they would either use a 1 out of 3, so they would add their MetaMask, they would add their hardware wallets and add a second MetaMask account. And that just means that if they lose one MetaMask or one hardware wallet, they still have access to their funds, right? So that's one example. Or then you could go, and add another layer of security, which is you have a 2 out of 3 setup. So I prepare all my transactions using a MetaMask, and then I co-sign those transactions using my hardware wallet. That's probably the safest example for an individual. And then if I lose my MetaMask or my hardware, I've got 3 owners, right? So I always have a hardware wallet or a MetaMask to fall back on. And that's another key use case that we've seen for individuals when they got a lot of funds, right?
So just to explain that, I think I missed just a little something there as far as with an individual, if I'm an investor. The smart contract doesn't hold a separate key, or Gnosis doesn't hold a separate key as part of that solution, correct?
Correct, as in the access to this smart contract or this key, for example, is defined by the smart contract. So when I say if I want to access this Gnosis Safe or this smart contract, I need 2 signers to sign that I have already as owners, right? It's there's no private key per se, but the private key is actually accessed via the threshold that I've assigned, or the policy that I've assigned, to use a better word.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out, let's say I'm an investor and I have a lot of money in a portfolio, and I trade relatively frequently, frequently enough where I don't want a second person to sign, but I want that second layer of security. Mm-hmm. But if I had 2 MetaMask wallets on my laptop and my hardware wallet, they're basically all in the same place and my house burns down. And, and all my seeds are, everything's gone. So is there some kind of external signature, like external point that I can rely on to recover my funds?
Yeah, and that's kind of that kind of goes outside the Gnosis Safe. It's like, how do you distribute keys, right? It's a key distribution problem. But what I would say is that you would have a family member that you trust. This is one example. You would have a family member that you trust, and you add them as an owner to your Gnosis Safe. And if your house burns down, then, it's a 1 out of 3 or a 1 out of 4 multisig. So you can just contact your parents or a very close friend, and yeah, they can access your funds via a hardware wallet or via any type of wallet that's compatible with the Gnosis Safe.
It's interesting. Do you give, are there demos or any resources available online for anyone who would be interested in this multi-signature solution?
So I would point them towards the Gnosis Safe Help Center as a key point for these days. And a great article that product managers wrote is, what Gnosis Safe setup should I use when you access the Getting Started section? And here is the 3 questions. All right, how many owners do I need? What's my threshold? And which owner wallets should I use? Should I use MetaMask? Should I use Trezor, Rainbow, all these various different ones? And we can't give a single best answer because it depends on your use case. But we do give you best practices, that we've seen from various different use cases, such as, projects or, individual investors that have a high amount that, don't want, to have that one single point of failure, right? So I would point them in the Help Center article, and of course, our developers and our product guys are on our Discord constantly. So reach out to us on Discord as well for those questions if you do have any concerns or considerations.
Great, thank you. One last question. I don't think I have any more questions in the chat. Have you been thinking about using maybe say things like your mobile phone as a signature device?
Yes, we actually have a mobile app. I can't demo it right now, but if you go to iOS or Android, we have a mobile application where you can sign transactions as long as you import your key to the mobile, and you can sign on transactions. And we're also working on an update where you can create a private key directly within your mobile device, since mobile devices are quite inherently secure. And yeah, so that's what we're working on for the summer. So you can sign transactions right now, but in summertime, you'll be able to create your own private key and create transactions as well on the mobile device.
That's great. Yeah, it's a very interesting project. I'm looking forward to seeing it grow and expand, and I can't wait to play with it myself.
Thanks very much. Yeah, keep an eye on the Safe Apps dashboard. I think we've already added 3 apps from third-party developers yesterday, so that list is gonna get bigger. So yeah, stay tuned.
Just one last quick question: How do you get in touch with all these protocols and let them know that they need to start optimizing for multi-sig solutions? And how do you get that arranged and build those relationships to make sure that goes into their development process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. What helps is that some of these projects are already using the Gnosis Safe to manage their funds or do a certain use case that they have, be it paying out their grants program or be it handling their treasury funds. So we normally leverage those relationships and get them to understand that, look, if you want to optimize, you should build a safe app and that's what the projects normally do. But we also offer a grants program as well for any community developers who want to think of an idea of a safe app, such as a wrapped ether, a wrapped ether wrapper, for example, or any type of interesting application. So we provide those grants as well for new apps.
That's great. Thank you very much, John. And for anyone who's interested, gnosis.io/safe. You can see their entire array of products there, and gnosis-safe.io to get right to the web interface. Thank you very much, John. Oh, he jumped off.
Yep, John, thank you so much. Up next, we've got David from Aave joining us now. Hey, David, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining us. Sorry about the login issues. We try to whitelist the entry into this. As you know, if we open it up, it'd be mayhem and all kinds of funny people. will send us all kind of messages. But thank you for joining us. Want to get into your talk immediately. But first, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Aave, and then let's get into your talk that you're going to be covering today, which will be how to grow beyond a $5 billion liquidity pool. A nice problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm a developer at Aave. I do a lot of community, full stack dev type things. And I've been in crypto since 2017, doing various things, various startups. But yeah, now fully focused on Aave. So yeah, in this talk, I'll go over some basics of Aave, and yeah, looking forward to fielding some interesting questions from the audience as well.
Okay, great. You have the share icon on the bottom. It's like an up arrow. You can use that to, and you're good to go. Please get started.
Cool. Yep. So I think that's sharing now. You can see that, Jimmy?
Yes, we can see it. Yep,
awesome.
Great.
All right. Cool. All right. Yeah. So I'm David. That's my Twitter and Telegram. Feel free to reach out if you need. All right. So for those that don't know, the Aave protocol is a liquidity protocol. So on one side, we have depositors, and they deposit whatever assets they want into the smart contracts, and in return, they receive constant interest based on protocol parameters like utilization and some risk parameters. On the other side, we have borrowers, and borrowers can take any loan instantly at either stable or variable interest rates, and they pay back this interest, or they pay back the loan whenever they want as well. So the loans can be for as long as they need them, and as long as they pay back the interest. And yeah, there's some interesting things around stable and variable interest rates, which I can go through a bit later as well. But essentially, variable interest rates are like spot interest rates that have a bit of volatility, sometimes go high, sometimes go low, whereas stable interest rates are much more stable. And generally, you can essentially lock in a stable rate. So, as mentioned, Aave was released on mainnet last year, early January last year in 2020, and since then we've grown to more than 5 billion total value locked, and the market size, is more than 5 billion. These numbers are already a bit outdated, but we're hovering around more than 5 billion. So it's been growing pretty crazy. In addition to the 5 billion TVL, we also have a staking module, which I'll go through as well. And this staking module is essentially a protection fund for the protocol, and that holds currently a bit more than $1.5 billion that helps protect the protocol from any potential losses. Then also we have this governance, and here's a screenshot of our governance forums, and you can see a lot of the way the protocol is upgraded and will grow in the future will be done through decentralized governance. So you can see here there's a lot of proposals for listing certain tokens on the markets, and that's how it will happen moving forward into the future. So I'll quickly go over some of the basic concepts around Aave, and then we can talk about the future of Aave and take questions as well. So like a lot of lending protocols, we have the earning side where you can deposit funds. Let's say you deposit 100 DAI into Aave, then you'll get A tokens in return. A tokens are essentially tokenized deposits, and that's one-for-one pegged. So a bit different from other lending platforms, where if you deposit 100 DAI, you'll get 100 A DAI in return, and they represent your deposit. We have borrows, and borrows, work in, and as you'd expect, we're an over-collateralized protocol. So if you have a collateral position, then you can borrow a certain amount, depending on how much you've collateralized into the protocol. We currently support more than 20 or so, probably more than 25 assets. So you can, deposit and borrow quite a few, or many different assets on the protocol. And then we have the more advanced features called credit delegation and flash loans, and I'll go through them in a bit more detail as well. So for credit delegation, if I was explaining it to a 5-year-old, I'd say that you let other people borrow money. If I was explaining it to a 15-year-old, I'd say that you deposit to earn money on Aave, and you earn extra by managing your own loans to other people. Oops, not sure what happened there. And if I was explaining it to a DeFi person, I'd say that you give others access to your credit line by depositing funds on Aave, and you approve a user or various users to draw credit from that credit line, and you let them draw up to that amount whenever they want. So what this enables, it allows the people that are drawing the credit to have uncollateralized loans, and it allows you as a depositor to earn extra interest on top of the protocol interest. So this has a lot of implications for, let's say, B2B and smart contract to smart contract type activities. So these are one of the sort of big applications that we see that will help grow activity in the protocol, and we're already seeing that with many interesting use cases of credit delegation. One example would be Yuan Finance leveraging credit delegation, or the version 1 of the credit delegation, in their link vaults to essentially allow the link vaults to earn high interest through various means utilizing credit delegation. And of course, enforcement of repayment can happen on-chain or off-chain. And when I say off-chain, I mean through legal agreements. So in version 1 of credit delegations, we had DeFi, which is a decentralized exchange. They had an agreement with someone to do a credit delegation, and they were able to borrow uncollateralized wrapped BTC whenever they needed it, and that's really useful for a decentralized exchange in that they don't have to hold wrapped BTC assets on their balance sheet. They can just have it whenever they need it, and then repay it back. So that's quite a large area of economic activity in the future. Next is flash loans, that hopefully a lot of people in the audience have heard quite a bit about. So we pioneered flash loans in early 2020 with version 1 of the flash loans. Now we have version 2, which opens up the design space a bit more. But for those that don't quite grasp it yet, I'll just explain it. If I was explaining it to a 5-year-old, it's free money. You have to pay back nearly immediately. If I was explaining it to a banker type, it's essentially an unsecured fixed-term loan for about 15 seconds. So that's the block time of Ethereum, with a very low fixed interest rate of currently 0.09%. This can change under governance. So I'll talk later a bit about governance. That the bank, in this case the protocol or the Ethereum EVM, can always collect at expiry. So there's essentially no risk for these flash loans, unsecured fixed-term loans. And in a DeFi or technical sense, what they actually are is that they're an uncollateralized loan supplied by the lending pool, where the amount that you flash loan plus a small fee, the 0.09%, has to be repaid by the end of the transaction. And the reason why you'd want to do this in one block at the end of the transaction is because in between the borrowing and the repayment, you can execute nearly any code that you want. And that's quite powerful. As you've probably heard in the industry, there's many types of activity that can happen, whether it's exploits or whether it's arbitrage or whether it's things like collateral debt swaps or moving positions from one DeFi protocol to another. That's what flash loans enable. And here's a diagram of sort of schematic of how a flash loan conceptually works. The important part of this diagram is that everything below the purple line can get reverted, which means it's basically undone if the flash loan is not paid back by the end of the transaction. So what you can see here is, the borrower requests a flash loan. The borrower is, in this case, a smart contract. It requests a certain amount. The Aave protocol gives that amount to the borrower, and the borrower does whatever they need to do by code, and then they repay back the debt at the end of the transaction. If they don't repay back the debt, and then it's like nothing ever happened, no money is lost, only the borrower needs to pay the gas costs of the failed transaction. This is an example of what a flash loan looks like on Etherscan. So you can see the powerful thing about flash loans is that it enables you to do many different things in one transaction. So here we have probably potentially 4, 5, 6 different transactions that are all bunched up into one transaction. Here's an example, an early example, actually, of version 1 flash loans. It was a small arbitrage, but these days there's a ton of other arbitrages that are done with flash loans, where it might be a $15 million flash loan, and someone makes $10,000 from an arbitrage. And this is quite powerful because there's no capital constraints for these arbitrage opportunities, so you don't actually need to hold that capital to take those opportunities. And so specifically for version 2 of our protocol, the flash loans allow batch flash loans. So instead of just flash loaning one asset, you can flash loan as many assets as you want that the protocol allows. And this is what it looks like in EtherScan. This is an example of a batch flash loan where they flash loan all these different assets and then repay them, including the small flash loan fee. Right. Now with governance, I'll go through governance quickly as well. So if I explain it to a 5-year-old, it basically means that the protocol belongs to everyone. If I was explaining to a 15-year-old, I'd say that anyone who owns the Aave token can help govern the protocol. And if I was explaining to a DeFi person, I'd say that it's a path towards decentralization, where token holders will vote and govern the protocol, from asset listings to protocol updates to parameter changes. So this is quite a detailed schematic of the Aave governance. The important thing here to note is that in Aave governance, it's different from other, let's say, DeFi governance mechanisms, in that we have the proposer and the voter are separate. So you can propose something, and you can be a separate entity from a voter, and the same thing, those powers are different. So as an Aave token holder, you can delegate your voting power separately from your proposal power. And that sort of enables some very interesting things to happen, where we will probably start to see what we call protocol politicians, where their sole purpose would be to propose changes to the protocol, and then the participants can decide to vote. So yeah, it creates some very interesting models. Then also there's a short time lock and long time lock. And basically what that means is that for certain changes, they can happen quickly, but for more critical, let's say, wider impacting changes, they come under the long time lock. So that's like a safety mechanism within the Aave governance as well. So that's quite important for expanding the protocol beyond both the current TVL, but also the current participants. And how do we get larger institutions, larger players to trust the system? And this is one way where they can actually govern the protocol, but also in a safe way, where the protocol can be protected from potential attacks, governance attacks as well. This is a quick example I run over of our decentralized governance in action. So Charlie from Curve, he posted on the forum saying that it's a proposal to list the Curve token. And then what happened is they didn't have enough proposal power to submit it on chain. So then Julian from also the Curve team, he tweeted, asking for people to delegate the proposal power to this address, and they managed to get enough proposal power, and then they were able to make their proposal on chain. And then shortly after, Curve got listed. I'm not sure the exact numbers at the moment, but on this screenshot you can see at that time there was $12 million worth of Curve in the reserve. At that time, it's probably quite a bit more now. So the summary of governance is that it's an off-chain process of, I guess, some requests for listings or getting feedback from the community. Then they need to get enough proposal power, and they create that proposal on chain. The voting happens, and then it's executed. Now, previously I mentioned the staking as well. So the staking also plays an important part in the governance as well, because as I mentioned, for let's say for large institutions or for more players to come into the space, they both need to trust the governance, that it can't be compromised, but also they need to know that if some unexpected thing happens where funds are lost, what happens? How are participants made whole again? And this is one of the ways, is that essentially Aave token holders have the choice to stake their tokens into what we call the safety module, and they receive a return, some interest in return, but at the same time, they can potentially be slashed up to 30% of the funds that they hold. So this creates a protection fund for the protocol. At the moment, there's $1.5 billion in the safety module. So I think we're probably one of the most well-protected protocols, at least on-chain, with this. And yeah, at the time of the screenshot, the staking APY was 6.2% for pure Aave, but you can also stake balancer pool LP tokens, and that APY is hovering above 30%, probably 30 to 60% or so. All right, so we can probably open up the floor to questions. I know I ran through this content pretty quickly, but yeah, if you're looking for more information, yeah, join our Discord or check out our documentation.
Fantastic. That was really good, David. I love the flash loan diagram. So a lot of people were asking what a flash loan is, and you kind of explained it really, really well. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Let me try to sort through some of them. Again, if you're asking questions, please ask it in the questions section so that we can stay organized and it doesn't kind of get swept up in a chat flow. First question from Felix. Did you think about any solution to create flash loans valid over multiple blocks? Could it somehow be possible to create or cross-chain flash loans?
Yeah, so this is a question that's come up before. I've personally had to think about this. I think it theoretically it could be possible. It depends. Like if you're doing theoretically it's possible for a cross blockchain. Let's say if you have an L2 or a sidechain, it depends how fast that L2 or sidechain is. The main issue would be around Oracle, having Oracle prices on both for the L2 or sidechain and L1 that you can rely on. But other than that, in version 2 of Aave, which is currently live, we have what we call debt incurring flash loans. So that essentially, and if you combine debt incurring flash loans with credit delegation, you sort of essentially get multi-block flash loans in a way. But yeah, we're sort of going deep down the rabbit hole. It probably requires a bit more technical explanation. But from a pure play, multi-block flash loan, there isn't any implementation in the wild of that yet. But I think there's things that functionally enable that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next question we have from Matt, a DeFi student, ex-BNP Paribas. What happens if the tokens borrowed during the flash loan get stuck somewhere during the transaction? Will the flash loan time out, revert all steps taken since the start of the flash loan? Yeah,
so exactly. So the way the EVM works is that if there's an error, programmatic error or something let's say it gets stuck, it essentially means it gets reverted, or it uses up all of the gas that was included in that transaction. Then it will just revert because the loan's not paid back. So the contracts will just revert everything.
Okay, and then we have one from Thomas of Bloomy. I had to upgrade from V1 to V2. What are the key differences?
So the key differences would be there's a lot of things, but there's gas savings. There's all the features around flash loans that I talked about. Native credit delegation, which is very powerful. So basically, you can allow people to borrow on your behalf, and that opens up a huge design space. Tokenized debt, we have now all the A tokens, including Aave tokens. They are all, I forgot the standard, but they allow gasless token transfers. They allow permit. That hasn't been implemented much in the wild for various reasons yet. But yeah, that feature is there for all A tokens. And then there's other technical upgrades as well. But those are the main, I guess, consumer-facing changes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any other questions, please pop them into the question sections. Just want to see if I missed anything. I'm looking at a couple of messages here. Let's see here. Okay, no, I think we've got to. Okay, great. I don't think we have any more questions at this point. Oh, here we do. We're coming in. Are you already working with big institutions and organizations on regulation, especially regarding flash loans? So I think maybe you want to say what are some of the pros and cons of flash loans, maybe, David. And then the question is, are you working with maybe the government or regulatory body and these institutions around anything to do with flash loans?
Yeah, sure. So I think to be clear, that flash loans don't necessarily enable anything that wasn't possible previously. It just democratizes the access to capital. So previously, it would only be whales that could, let's say, take these arbitrage opportunities or discover certain vulnerabilities, but now anyone can. So I think that's a pro. The con is that if you don't write secure smart contracts, then people will find exploits more quickly because capital is no longer constrained. In regards to regulation, I'm not aware of anything internally we're doing in regards to flash loan specific regulation because I don't think it's really an issue. But we do have general counsel that's working in that space, and we have a certain license for our UK entity, similar to what Revolut and Coinbase have in the UK. So of course that will come under certain regulations and compliance standards as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. To the question, we have one more from Jason Croman, investor. If I deposit funds as collateral and take a loan from Aave, does my deposit still earn interest?
Yeah, exactly. It does. So some people do that with, that's what most people do. And you don't even have to take a loan. You can just deposit and earn interest if you have no use for borrowing funds.
Okay, great. All right, David, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. I really appreciate it. It's really great information. You might want to just leave information around the links that you put up on the chat so people actually can click on them. That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Next up will be Seb from InstaDapp. I'm just going to get him up on stage here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Enjoy the rest. Bye.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, Seb. Yes, they can hear you. We cannot see you.
Oh, I'm surprised. Let's see. I'm not sure why you can't see me, but that's okay because I'm going to speak a little close to the microphone for a minute.
Okay. Do you have a presentation? You'll be able to do that. Okay, fantastic, great. All right, let me first welcome you. Welcome, Seb. Really appreciate, and yeah, we see the presentation now. Really appreciate you taking the time to come to us to talk about InstaDapp. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what InstaDapp is, just at a high level, and then jump right into please your presentation.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think it's going to fit really well what we talk about today because we are going to talk about some of the protocols that have already been speaking. So my name is Seb. I'm the community manager at InstaDapp. If you've been on our Discord or if you've asked for support, you've probably talked to me. So what is InstaDapp? InstaDapp is a decentralized application and protocol that is built on top of other DeFi components, and it gives users and developers powerful tools to manage their portfolio. If you are a developer, I will put some links to our documentation because you could do some really amazing stuff right now just using JavaScript. I won't talk too much about that, but yeah, I'll link that at the end. So the DeFi Smart account is a on-chain smart contract wallet. It is kind of similar to Argent or Gnosis. And what it does is it has a built-in smart contract infrastructure that allows different DeFi protocols to kind of be built in and to access different parts of the contracts. At the very end, I'm going to go through a simulation of the DApp, so this will make a little bit more sense. So the DeFi Smart Account, you can borrow, you can lend, you can leverage, you can also refinance through the DeFi Smart Account. You can also do some more interesting multi-sig things as well, such as sharing account access, or in the future, maybe having a protocol or a smart contract manage components or parts of your accounts. So how do we kind of accomplish this? So the first one is DeFi Legos. And I know we use this expression a lot in DeFi, but InstaDapp really is kind of like the brick maker. So what we do is you look at different contracts and wrap different components of a contract. So we can wrap, let's say, borrowing DAI from Compound, and then we can wrap a different function to make a maker vault. And then we kind of combine these together to do what we call strategies. And essentially, it's just ways to leverage and mix different transactions to make them more complicated and more, essentially more useful. So one of the biggest ways that we do this is through flash loans. So really quickly, I know we've been talking a little bit about flash loans today. The way I would describe it, a flash loan is borrowed capital that is repaid in the same transaction that it was borrowed. So another way to think about it is you're being kind of given liquidity for your transaction. And I know flash loans have kind of received a negative reputation, as we've heard today. They've been used in the past to exploit vulnerabilities in certain DeFi dApps, but flash loans can be used to do some really useful things. And specifically with DeFi, you'll hear a lot of over-collateralization in different protocols like Compound and Aave. So flash loans kind of fits this paradigm well, where you're able to access this extra amount of capital to do different functions. So let's just give a quick example, and then I'll show it on the platform. But for now, let's say you had deposited ETH into Compound and you had borrowed DAI, and let's say you were paying 8% and you were pretty happy with that, but then the market changed and you were paying 16%. So what you could do is maybe go over to Maker. But the difficulty in crypto is that you're going to have to move not only your assets, but your liabilities as well. And that's kind of the most challenging part. And that's what flash loans can really help to facilitate. And just to show here that DYDX has had flash loans enabled in their platform for a very, very long time. And a lot of users didn't really realize how much we used it. So Igor from the block had shown here, had written a nice report and showed that we were about 60% of the use of the DYDX flash pool. And then we also have our own flash pool that we call InstaPool. And this is kind of just an example of how it would route different liquidity. So like, let's say in this case, you were trying to do some type of transaction or refinancing or something that required 100 million DAI. And let's say that wasn't immediately available in the market. So what it could do is it could borrow Ethereum from DYDX, deposit that Ethereum into Compound to borrow the necessary DAI, complete whatever transaction you needed to do, whether it be refinancing or whatnot, and then go back and repay the DAI, withdraw the Ethereum, and pay back the flash loan that it started with DYDX. And of course, it would have to do this all in one transaction. And so the last thing I want to talk about, that's kind of the most newest powerful thing that we've added, is automation. So, why does automation matter in DeFi? One of the big reasons is that basically automation allows you to better manage your position across protocols, and it kind of allows you to better utilize your capital. So let's say if you were yield farming or just doing something with your Ethereum, it might be kind of difficult for you to constantly manage what's happening with the prices. So you could do some type of automatic refinancing, and that's actually what we did right here. So this was our first integration with Gelato, and this is a automatic refinancing from a Maker Vault, which would have a debt to collateral ratio, I believe it's 66%. And what the protocol will do here is see if there's a better place to put your position. So in this kind of image, it decides, well, you know, Compound is a better place to put your position and save you from liquidation. All right, so I'm going to get into the simulator because it's going to make a lot more sense when we go into the platform. And if there are questions during the simulator, I think we should just kind of go ahead and ask them because it will make more sense. So let me jump over. And hopefully you can see this still.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So so let's go through like the DeFi simulator. So let's say you don't have an account with InstaDapp, right? You actually don't have to create one. You just click create account, and you will see over here it says try in simulation mode. So you click simulation mode, and it will generate a forked environment for you to try out InstaDapp. So the first thing it does is it deposits 100 Ethereum, and then you're kind of free to go. So first thing we do is we go back here, we go to deposit, and we go ahead and deposit this test Ethereum. Now, one of the things you'll notice is this will be very, very fast because it is a test environment. It is not actually on Ethereum. So now we have 159,000 of Ethereum, and I'm just going to jump really quickly and show you just some of the things you can do here. So let's start with Maker. So let's say you wanted to create a Maker position. Well, I know we're going to hit an error, but I'm going to let it happen anyway. So let's say we wanted to do an Ethereum A vault. So you do this here, and you say, I'm going to deposit 40 Ethereum, and you just click supply. And then you'll see on the interface here that you have a new maker vault. That's the vault ID, that's the value. This is the stabilization rate. And then from here, you could go ahead and borrow DAI. So let's say you do 2,000, and you say borrow. And now you have some borrowed DAI. So we were talking earlier about the strategies, these different components that get mixed together. So if you see over here on strategies, you can actually do leveraging, for example. So we can show you what that is. So let's say you wanted to leverage your Maker Vault. So in this case, what you would be doing is borrowing DAI, swapping that DAI for Ethereum, and immediately depositing that Ethereum as collateral.
Is there any way you could zoom your screen a little bit? Because the font is a little bit small.
Oh, yeah.
It's just maybe a little bit of a zoom in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. So let's say in this case you wanted to leverage your position. So we can go and say, let's try to do half. So we'll say, you know, we want to borrow 30,000 DAI off of this position and recursively deposit it back into the position. So here it tells you sort of, you know, the projected results. So you would have 58 Ethereum collateral, and then you would now have 32,000 DAI debt. And let's just run that. Okay, so then this is going to leverage your position. So yeah, sometimes it does have sometimes it has a little bit of a delay.
Isn't that kind of normal?
For the fork environment, yeah, sometimes it's a little bit slow. But hopefully that will go through. And let me go back to the main page and see if it does it for me. Okay, we can try something. Let's just try again real quick because it usually does work. Let's just do a little smaller position real quick. Maybe it doesn't want to show me love today. We can try it. Oh, there you go. All right, so in this case, you went and borrowed 3,000 additional DAI, and then that borrowed DAI was immediately used to purchase additional Ethereum and immediately placed in your position. So then let's say in this case, you wanted to maybe bring this whole position over into a different protocol. So you could use something like refinancing right here, and you would find that maker position that you have, which is this one, and then you can choose the, which protocol you'd like to move it into. So let's just use Compound for now, and we'll go ahead and say max. And what's really cool here is that it's moving not only all the assets, but also that you owe is also shifted over as well. And then if you go over back to Compound, now you'll see that you have that position over here in Compound. And there's some other very more kind of complicated things you could try. So for example, you could swap the debt. So let's say here, the borrowing USDC is actually a little bit cheaper than borrowing DAI. So you could do a debt swap and actually go ahead and swap the underlying debt. So this could be used to get a better interest rate. It actually could also be used to do some really complicated things like shorting. I won't go through the specifics of that, but essentially, let's say if you had DAI debt and you believe that Bitcoin was going down, you could convert your debt to Bitcoin in hopes that its price would go down, thus decreasing your debt. It's a little bit more complex, but that's completely possible through the platform. And I can kind of keep going, but I wonder if there's any other questions right now on what I've shown so far.
No, just keep going. And I'd love to see that the thing that you mentioned about shorting. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a little hard to show because of the market. But let's just say, for example, here we thought that like Bitcoin was going to go down, and we'll do a debt swap, right? So right now we owe 5,000 on the USDC. So let's say we go and convert it to Bitcoin. So what we're going to do here is actually change what we owe the protocol from USDC to Bitcoin. Why does it go? It's not quite as much. Oh, right. It wants me to borrow it in Bitcoin. So that's about 2. It's a little too much. Let's do 1.5. So that's okay. So in this case, you would be switching your USDC debt into the, Bitcoin. So now what you owe the protocol is Bitcoin. However, if the price of Bitcoin would go down, essentially what you're doing is a short, because it would be easier to rebuy and close out that position. And if you wanted to do that, you can use this function over here called save. In traditional finance, this is sometimes called unwinding a position. So let's just use that real quick. So in this case, when you save a position, you're going to use your collateral, convert that to the debt that you need to repay. So in this case, let's just use the Ethereum that we have to repay the wrapped Bitcoin collateral. I mean, the wrapped Bitcoin debt. So this is about 3 Ethereum or so, a little bit more. Just 4. And then you would do this. And then what you'll see is that now your wrapped Bitcoin debt will go down, as well as the collateral value. And then I just wanted to show one other thing, because I believe actually we're asked about this. So really quickly, I'm going to go to Uniswap. And I'm going to actually go ahead and swap some Ethereum for, let's do USDC. For the trade, we'll go quickly. Okay, great. So in Uniswap, you are going to see here all the LP pools that you could use. And some of these can actually be used as collateral in Maker as well. So let's just really quickly do an Ethereum USDC LP. So in this case, we'll do 10,000 USDC. So that gets paired with 6.2 Ethereum to create the LP token. And then you go ahead and click supply, it creates the token. And then if you go to Maker, we can create another vault over here. And if we scroll all the way down, we'll find the Uniswap LP vaults. So we did Ethereum and USDC right here. And just supply the full amount. And now what's really cool about this is now you have a maker vault that is backed by Uniswap pool tokens that also earn fees from trades. So it's a very capital efficient way to use some of your assets. And this is right. This is the position right here. And just like any other vault, you can also do these other strategies such as leveraging, saving or unwinding. You can swap the underlying collateral. You can also add automation. Automation doesn't work in the simulation mode, but it does work on the live app. So you'll be able to automate, let's say, this vault if you'd like, and go ahead and use the capital from it to do something else, knowing that if Ethereum has a flash crash, the protocol will quickly either move you to Aave 2 or Aave or Compound, just depending on the conditions at that time. That's pretty much it. I mean, I can kind of keep playing around with this, but I really implore you guys here to check it out.
Yeah, I got a couple questions, Seb. So let's say I want to create a yield farming bot. What kind of APIs? And it's a beautiful user interface, but I don't want to use this user interface, but I want to use the capabilities that are behind it. What's available to me that InstaDapp provides that I can kind of integrate with and start using some of this on my own?
Yeah, so currently in terms of this interface that we have, it's very user driven. But as we go forward, we're going to build out the actions with Gelato Network. So actions, kind of like the vault automation, you'll be able to sort of over time create different strategies. It's just not fully implemented right now. So that's coming, sort of being able to create your strategies on the interface. And then another kind of more advanced thing is, so when you have an account, you can actually add different users to the account. So it'd be possible in the future to, let's say, use some type of kind of like fund manager type contract that could be kind of plugged in here that can safely automate some of the functionality of InstaDapp for you. And we do have our SDKs available. It would be possible for a developer to create some bots as well, but we are thinking about the built-in automation and in the future some type of smart contract fund manager function as well.
And can you just briefly describe what Gelato is? Like, what's Gelato, and why is that important? Why are they kind of emerging?
Yeah. So Gelato is a smart contract execution protocol, and they have a decentralized way of accessing and executing different functions on the user's behalf, right? So for us, what we use is, we'll go to Maker. So what we have is vault automation. So what that does is Gelato is reading the Maker price, the liquidation price, directly from Maker. And if it sees that it has crossed a certain threshold, it has a bunch of actions that will automatically execute. And there's also other logic built into it in terms of, where does this go? And yeah, there's kind of the possibilities are endless. So we can do things that are like time-based. We can base it on other kind of token prices. We can so we can actually like leverage other APIs potentially and bring them in to automate. So just being able to have this automation protocol, it kind of supercharges everything that we have so far.
Cool, very cool. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Seb or regarding InstaDapp? Please pop those questions in now.
And just to talk about these other things I kind of skipped through. So we helped Aave users migrate from Aave 1 to Aave 2 as well using the flash loan. So if you had, let's say, an Aave 1 position, you could either migrate it from within InstaDapp, or you could bring your V1 position all the way into InstaDapp through this portal here.
Got it. Okay. We don't have any questions coming in. Any more questions coming in at this time? Is there anything more you want to share, Seb? You do have a little bit. You do have a little bit of time. It's up to you if you want to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I really ask everyone to kind of check us out. There's a lot more to InstaDapp than just sort of this interface. You know, the interface acts as the primary way that you access the DeFi smart account, this smart contract wallet. But it doesn't have to be. So in the future, it's possible that you could use the DeFi smart account, kind of like how Gnosis, you can plug into other apps. It'd be possible for InstaDapp to kind of be free from the interface that it is in today. And there's also a lot of really interesting things with security in terms of how we wrap certain functions that I think are very interesting. So, for example, we've recently been hearing a lot about exploits with the ERC20 allowance. So if you don't know, so when you interact with certain ERC20 tokens, like say on your MetaMask, it will ask you, hey, can this contract use X amount of tokens? And most users put, unlimited. And there are risks associated with that because, if a contract has access and it's exploited, it could potentially drain your tokens. So InstaDapp has a really cool security function because it acts as this like second wallet. And therefore, a lot of these permissions, a lot of these vulnerabilities that you would put on your primary wallet, you can kind of have it separated out into this other kind of safer, more enclosed environment.
Got it. Okay. I don't think we have any more questions. We're done with our morning session. We're going to take a little bit of a break. Seb, anything else you feel like you want to explain? You feel like you want to cover? Because we're going to take about a 30-minute break. The team has to go and actually get some, believe it or not, breakfast / lunch. We're hungry. I'm hungry. I'm tired. A little bit of a break, and we'll come back. I think, Seb, if you can drop some links in the chat. One is to the app itself, and then the Discord, definitely for sure, so that people can follow up. And then we're going to resume at a little bit before 1 p.m. We've got a fantastic panel that we will. The topic will be investing in DeFi. It's going to be led by Raymond Chen, and we've got some great panelists. And then our afternoon session is going to include Cream Finance. We're going to have Phantom, Algorand, another group that just came onto our radar, Money on Chain. Compound is coming back. Just explain the protocol again. We have PiDAO, and then at 5 o'clock we have Chainlink. So it's basically back-to-back lectures again, starting at 1 o'clock. And then later in the afternoon we have DYDX, YEarn, and we'll be actually YEarn is tomorrow. So then we will wrap up our day today around 5:30, 6 o'clock with DYDX. So a bunch of more stuff coming up. Seb, thank you so much. The demonstration was really, really useful. Really appreciate it. Definitely will be playing with InstaDapp myself over the weekend. So thank you for
Thank you for having me. Yeah, please reach out. I'm on the Discord. You can feel free to ask any question. No question is a wrong question. Just ask it.
Great. Yeah, appreciate it. Yep, no question is the wrong question. So we're going to continue and resume at 1 p.m. We're closing off our AM session. So if you're inside of AirMeet, you'll see the session close, and then there'll be another session, the afternoon session that's going to open up. And we're going to resume at 1 o'clock. Actually, a couple minutes before 1 o'clock, we'll get started, and then we'll start the panel exactly at 1 and talk about DeFi investing. And then we do have a panel tomorrow on DeFi trading with another group of all-stars. I'm really looking forward to all of that. So see you guys around 1 p.m. Eastern Time.